It is time to avoid extinction. Good morning, good evening, whatever time of day it is for you, welcome to this thing that I do called Thor's Entertainment. I am Thor. Today I am starting a playthrough for a game called Endlingextinctionisforever. Endling is a game that I had never heard of before playing it. I just kind of gambled on the game and this one definitely caught me off guard. I did not expect to like it as much as I did, and now I am making videos on it. So, what is Endling about? Well, being blunt, it is a very somber game. One that may not be for everyone, and it differs quite a bit from the other games I've been playing on the channel so far. Despite the cartoonish presentation, this is a game that tackles some pretty heavy issues. It focuses a lot on things like pollution, deforestation, and also the extinction of an entire species of animals, potentially. So this differs a lot from some other cartoonish games with some over-the-top villains you can't take too seriously, like say the Crash Bandicoot series. And this also differs a lot from some other games I've played for the channel that include some more serious tones, but are also a little bit too hard to take serious, like maybe Resident Evil or Mortal Kombat. Here we're not going to have any villains that are just mustache-twirlingly evil. For the most part, we're going to be dealing with animals and people who are just struggling to survive. And as a result, they are put into conflict with each other as well as the environment around them. This one is a lot more serious and at times depressing, but the story is very good. But I don't know if me giving a description alone is going to be enough to capture the tone of this game very well. To help out with that, I'm going to go ahead and show a trailer for the game to give you an idea of what kind of game we are dealing with. Alright, and there is our tone setter for the game ahead. As the trailer implies, we are going to take control of a mother fox in a dystopian world where the species is nearly extinct. The game is going to start off with the fox just barely surviving a disaster, and then she has to keep her cubs alive over the course of 30 nights. While doing so, she's going to have to teach them how to survive. And as I hinted at before, this is going to be complicated by factors like hunters, deforestation, and pollution. There is going to be more to the plot, but I'm not going to give any of that away before I start playing through the game. It is mention worthy that there are no speaking lines in this game. This is going to be 100% a visual experience. The whole story is up to you to find through exploration, and it's told non-verbally to the player. While this game may not be my usual kind of entertainment, and the story is a little bit depressing at times, I think it is a really good story and I'm looking forward to playing through it again. So I am ready to get started, and I'll go ahead and throw this warning out there before the game begins. We are going to be dealing with situations like a massive forest fire. There are going to be hunters and furriers stalking the woods for animals. And while controlling the foxes, we are going to be exploring places like a chicken processing plant. So with all that being said, there are going to be scenes where animals get hurt. That may not be for everyone, and you may not want to see it. So I wanted to throw that out there before I begin. With that warning out of the way, let's get started and try to prevent extinction. We are immediately thrown into the very literal fire, because we begin during a forest fire. No cause is immediately clear. We can see other animals like a buck nearby that is suffering from the same issue we are, just running through the woods trying to escape. Further down the path, we can get a glimpse at a building in the distance alongside a water tower. As we run by and gaze at that building, a tree is going to fall down blocking our path. However, we do have the ability to dig underneath it and continue down this trail. Also, even further back through the smoke and the fire, you may be able to see a radio tower with the number 3 on it. That number 3 is illuminated and just enough for us to see at certain times during the forest fire. That is going to be a hint of where we need to go. And also trying to flee the woods is a nearby rabbit. Eventually, our escape attempt comes to a stop nearby a natural park map and a display with a chart of preserved species. On the sign, we can see that wolves, bears, squirrels, and foxes are all crossed out. Rabbits, deer, and badgers, those are the only animals not crossed out, and they end up being among the only animals we see in this game. So I think all of the crossed out species are those considered already extinct, making this fox rare and among the last of its kind. A tree falls and blocks our path, but we can see a radio tower in the distance with the number 3 on it, giving us an idea of where we need to go. We now have to backtrack and the natural park map has fallen down, revealing a new path. Following that, we end up reaching the building and the water tower that we saw before, and we can climb a pipe. Doing so allows us to reach an elevated path that leads to a cliffside. Unfortunately, the deer we saw earlier is burning and panicking. It cannot stop before running off the cliff and knocking us down with it. The deer passes away from the fall and the fire, and we find ourselves outside the natural park and by a road. The fox narrowly avoids a tactical response vehicle driving by. After being hurt from the fall, we limp across the street, and the goal now is just to find somewhere safe. Still glowing in the distance is the number 3 from the radio tower. Even though it is distant, we are much closer to it now than we were before. So we keep trying to get closer and we try finding a path to the radio tower. As we do, somebody in a gas mask will take notice of us. They are going to be on the very top of the rocky hillside where we can see a fire burning in the distance. Whenever we get close enough, we will see that there is a person there, and they will very visibly look at us whenever we walk by. They do this while we approach, but they do not do anything to get in our way. Instead, they run away whenever a drone detects them. After everything to start the game, we finally make it to the radio tower, and we find an unoccupied den at the tower's base. That is where we stop for the night, and we take shelter from the disaster. The passage of time in this game is a little bit odd. The next night that we control the fox after the forest fire is considered night number 1, but it does not appear to be the very next night after the fire. Enough time has passed for snow to cover the entire ground. On this night I am returning to the cliffside where the deer and the fox fell. When I do that, we do not see any smoke rising from the forest where the fire was. So considering that and the snow, I'm not actually sure how much time has passed. This is not the only time in the game whenever the passage of time is a little bit unclear. We get that later on as well. I'll cover that whenever it happens, but for now I'm going to assume that each night that passes is not happening consecutively. Regardless, this is our first night controlling the fox since the forest fire, and we have to reach 30 nights to reach the end of the game. Now the reason for going back to the cliff was we wanted to find the remains of the deer. It is unfortunate how the animal died, but it is deceased, and we could make use of that meat to feed our cubs. Also, there are no other deer in this game, so this is the only one that you can use for food, and it will not last forever. Eventually the body does go away. I assume it just decomposes. That's relevant because there is an achievement for eating every type of food in this game. And this one, the deer meat, it is super missable at the very beginning of the game. After collecting the deer meat, we return to the den to feed our cubs, and that will conclude night number 1. Now begins night number 2. This is going to be another night of the same thing. We just need to find food and then return to the den before daytime, which makes sense considering foxes are nocturnal. We also get a meter at the bottom of the screen that pops up from time to time, reminding us how much longer it is until the sun rises. When getting food these first 2 nights, I just get food that I know is going to expire soon like the deer, or I go for food that renews on a nightly basis like the berries. This early in the game, all food that you collect is going to replenish the same amount of health for the cubs in the den. So I save the more nutritious and limited foods for when they leave the den, and the health replenishment starts to change depending on the food. For now, we just keep it simple and end these nights easily and quickly. This night introduces a game-long objective to get the stolen 4th cub back, because the man who saw us enter the den after escaping the wildfire has returned. That person is referred to as the Scavenger, and while we were sleeping he lured the little cub outside. From here we have to be on the lookout for scents that allow us to track the missing cub. They also give us glimpses of things that happened whenever we were not around. The first scent that we find is coming from the lure that was used to get the cub to go outside. The scene that it provides allows us to see the Scavenger taking the cub. The second scent is coming from a glove that the Scavenger loses whenever the cub bites his finger. The scene it reveals shows that interaction where the cub is biting the Scavenger while he's being carried away. The Scavenger also has a cage in his other hand that is ultimately used to contain the cub. The third scent comes from a battery that whenever we investigate, we see a scene of it falling off of the Scavenger's boat whenever he boarded it with the cub. Those are all the scents that we can track on this night. But they are not going to be the only ones, there are going to be plenty as the nights progress. We just have to keep on surviving until we detect more of them on other nights. Just like on this night, whenever there are scents to find, there are always going to be 3 of them. And whenever we follow those, they are going to be expanding the story and allowing us to track the cub. Whenever they come up, we just keep following them in hopes of getting the cub back. For tonight though, that is all we can do. So we are going to shift our focus back onto the cubs that the fox still has. We need to find more food and return to them. I take my time getting back to them though, just exploring a little bit. Earlier, if you looked far into the background, you could see a factory with the name Corp. That is going to be a corporation that we see in the background a good amount. Also, not long ago, whenever we were traveling this path, we saw men in hazmat suits investigating a stream of water connecting to the factory. Given the full body protection that they were wearing, there is good reason to believe that the water is contaminated in a big way. Then further down the path, we could see a fisherman's shack on a small island. There is not much for us on that island right now, but it will be coming up again on another night. After seeing all of that, I just loop around until I eventually am able to return to the den with a berry. And this is going to be the very last night that the cubs stay inside the den. Going forward, they are going to be joining the nightly game. Checking the map on night number 4 shows that 3 paths have just opened up for us. So the whole Fox family is going to be checking those out. After that cutscene, this is again an example of the passage of time being a little bit weird. This is night number 4, but the cubs are now mature enough to come running along with us. In that cutscene, we got an unclear passage of time, but to reach this point where they can explore outside the den and they are fully weaned off the mother, they would need to be at least 6 to 8 weeks old. So between nights 3 and 4, apparently about 2 months has passed by. And now the 3 cubs are going to introduce some new benefits and challenges to the game. Mostly challenges at first. We now have a united health bar that constantly depletes over time. We need to eat in order to refill it. Food now heals different amounts of health depending on what exactly you are eating. Starting off the night, I grab a fish and carry it around as I explore. At the moment, the fish can replenish more health than we have lost. So eating it right now would return my health to max, but that is kind of a waste. The health bar is just going to immediately start depleting again anyway, so I am better off waiting until the food can replenish more of my health later. Also at times, you are going to see the mother fox getting large distances away from the cubs. That is fine. They will keep following my path, and most enemies in this game completely ignore the cubs. Instead, they focus on the mother fox. The one exception I can think of are owls. You have to sneak by those birds or they will attack one of the cubs. And I just dropped the fish for the cubs to eat. The fish could have replenished more health if I waited a little bit longer, but I found a berry bush. So I decided to go ahead and swap out the fish for a berry. Now there are a lot of foods I try to avoid this early on because once you eat them, they do not come back. That's mostly going to be the animals like fish and rats. But the berries, they come back on a nightly basis. Now as seasons change, I believe some of them become unavailable, but for right now the berry bush I just took the berries from, that one should come back on a nightly basis for as long as it is snowing. The snow that is falling, and I guess winter as a whole, is going to last for about 12 nights. So that should be a pretty consistent food source for us going forward. It is a little bit early for us to return to the den right now. If we were to do so, it would be a penalty against our health and it would deplete. And while we have some time to kill on this night, I want to make my way back to the river area where we saw the guys in the hazmat suits, because on this night and going forward, progressively we are going to start to see more hazards presented that can hurt the foxes or even kill them. And I want to show one of those right now. Another new challenge introduced on this night are traps that we need to jump over. And as I wander around exploring these new mechanics, I also see the hazmat guys are still exploring the river area. I just wanted to point that out for a moment because it's going to be a regular sight for us, but going back to the traps, whenever playing this game, I tend to get in a hurry and I forget about those things, so I end up running into them more than I probably should. If that happens, the mother fox will get hurt temporarily, and while she is hurt, you cannot fight off attackers. That is basically an instant death if you run into a hostile person and cannot run away. Fortunately, if you do run into a trap, it is then used up and it cannot hurt you again. And whenever you are hurt, you will know because you're kind of limping around. That eventually will go away on its own, but it takes a little bit of time. And as we walk off this injury, I continue to explore and look for a little bit more food as the night starts to come to an end. We don't need a whole lot considering our health is mostly full, but we do need a little bit just to try and keep it as close to max as we can going into the very next night. I end up making a stop at another berry bush, and on that path where the bush is, if we continued forward, we would eventually run into the den of a badger. There is some more food over there in front of that den, and if you're really sneaky, I believe you can get that food from the badger. But more often than not, you are going to be run off by that animal. So I'm not going to bother with that right now, and I'm just going to settle for the berry and return to the den. And you may start to see at the very bottom, the day-night cycle meter is now flashing white and red. That is an indication that the sun is about to come up, and we can now return to the den and go to sleep without suffering any penalty to the health bar. We can also now see a new game mechanic on display. By default, the cubs will learn the jump ability, so now they can handle higher ledges. Most of the other skills that the cubs can learn are missable, so we are going to need to be on the lookout for those going forward. The cub skills will develop more as you explore certain areas at the right time, and acquiring them does make the game much easier overall. During this playthrough, I intend for the cubs to learn all of them. And as we begin night number 5, I was just checking the map and I saw a yellow question mark. Those markers can represent events that only happen on that night or on very few nights. So whenever we see those, we really need to look into them. And I'm going to see if I can find my way to that spot right now. Along the way, I sneak up on a rat and catch it for food later. And looking at where that marker is, this event appears to be inside of the Corp factory. But I don't actually know if we can enter that area yet. So this event might take place over multiple nights, but I'm not entirely sure. Now I walk around the perimeter of the factory, and it appears to still be secure. So I don't think I'm going to get inside of there tonight. Since that is not going to be an option for me, I start walking around and seeing what else I can find. I end up deciding to return to the badger area I was talking about earlier, but I do avoid getting too close to the den. After all, if we do get too close, the badger is just going to chase us away. And while I start to travel in that direction, I do notice that the cubs are lagging very far behind. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this is normally fine, but if you ever find yourself in a situation where the cubs just do not seem to be following you anymore, you can bark at the cubs to get them moving again. Whenever you bark, they should go directly to you. Although in this case, I did not really have to resort to that, they did eventually just catch up. And while I am exploring the area a little bit more, I don't actually think there is too much more to see tonight. Oh, and while I'm thinking about it, I did mention that it's okay for the cubs to lag behind because they will continue to follow you. The only example I can think of where that might become a problem is if you run by an owl. They are typically sleeping and running by them will wake up the owl. This will lead to the bird attacking one of the cubs, and if you are too far away, you might not be able to save your cub from the owl. So yeah, it's okay for the cubs to lag behind, but do be on the lookout for that. As I walk around, we do get to see a Corp billboard in the background, and on that billboard is the motto for a better tomorrow. And considering we do get to eventually explore the Corp grounds, checking out their factory, and we also get to see plenty more references to them as the game progresses, I guess we will get to see whether or not that motto for a better tomorrow is disingenuous or if they really mean it. About the most eventful thing left I have to check on this night is, I guess, the Fisherman's Island. On the way there, I end up knocking an apple out of a tree. Unlike the berries, I don't think that replenishes, so that is a one-time item. But the apples do restore a really good amount of health, so that's kind of nice. And after eating that, we just keep on checking food off of the list of things that we need to eat. Oh, and I have made references to it up to this point, but why don't we go actually take a look at the badger. I go over to its area and it comes out ready to chase me away immediately. And I do a quick sniff and I can see the scent of food behind it. So yeah, there is food for us to potentially collect in front of its den, but we would have to sneak around it somehow. And I'm showing the path where you could potentially do that now. But since I'm running around, it's going to follow me to both sides of its den, just everywhere I go really. So even though we potentially could get the food from the badger, it's not really worth it. I'm not low enough on health. And there are just plenty of other options available to me, so you know what, Badger? You enjoy your food, and I'm gonna go check out some other stuff. And even though I did want to check out the Fisherman's Island, there really isn't much going on over there right now. Walking around that area, we can see a man sitting in a chair and fishing, and there are some food sources on the island. I go ahead and take advantage of some berries. But yeah, there really is not too much going on here right now. Like I said earlier, that will eventually be changing, but tonight is not the night. One detail I just noticed while walking around the area were some signs that say no fishing. I am thinking that those signs might be related to the water contamination being investigated by the guys in hazmat suits. That is just a theory, but it is something I think might be related. And after that detour, I suppose we don't really need to stall too much longer. The sun is about to come up, and we just need to avoid any more annoying traps and return to the den. Yeah, even the night to day meter is telling me that it's time to go back to the den. We don't have to worry about losing any health. We just say goodbye to the badger, good night to the badger, or good day to the badger. We say something to the badger. We leave, we make our way back to the den, and it's time for us to call it a day or night, or it's time to go to sleep. And that is going to conclude night number 5. Going into night number 6, I check the map and I notice that the yellow question mark is gone. So that was a one-night event. And I was mistaken. I thought the event was taking place in the Corp factory, but you can actually see it taking place at the exact same spot where the Cub was loaded into the Scavenger's boat. I ended up finding that out whenever playing through the game again later on. Now we don't miss too much by missing that event, but what happened was we can witness Corp taking a big dump truck and shoving a bunch of garbage into the river. So immediately they are off to a bad start, living up to their motto for a better tomorrow. Just right out the gate, it does not seem like they care at all. But yeah, we missed that, and even though we did miss the event, we still have some important stuff to do, some of which is taking place tonight, because we have scents to follow to try getting our missing 4th Cub back. Those scents are going to lead us back to the Fisherman's Island. So after circling it a little bit yesterday, finally that spot is going to be important to the story. The first scent is going to come from a bucket that is on the bridge leading to the island. That scent reveals a scene where the gas mask wearing Scavenger is still carrying around our Cub in a cage. It appears the Scavenger is trying to haggle with the Fisherman, who is also wearing a gas mask. The haggling is over a pharmaceutical suitcase the Fisherman is carrying. The second scent comes from a fishing bowl. In this scene we see the haggling did not work out for the Scavenger. The Fisherman declined the offer and walked away with the medicine he had in the suitcase. The third scent is coming from that same suitcase, which we find on the ground. It is going to be on the path ahead, just on the other side of this obstacle. Although there is currently no sign of the Fisherman or the Scavenger anywhere near the suitcase. This reveals a scene where the Scavenger stole the case, opened it, and left with a single medicine bottle. That was the last scent available to us tonight, and we will just have to wait for another night to pick up the search again. Still, we are beginning to learn a little bit more about the Scavenger that took our Cub. On the island is one of the earliest human threats that you can find. Now, I don't necessarily think he's the very first one, but he is one of the earliest. So consider from this point forward, there will be hostile, desperate humans that will try to kill you. Many of them are just desperate people who see you as a way to survive and make their lives a little bit easier. If they grab you, you will have a shot to fight them off. If you succeed, you and the person will be hurt. You will need to run away before they recover, because they are just going to stand in place, and you will have the opportunity to get away. Typically, the human is going to recover faster than you will, but because they are standing still as they recover and you have the opportunity to run away immediately, as long as you don't run into a dead end or take way too much time, you should be able to get away just fine. Now, if you do not get away in time and they recover and attack you while you are still hurt, you're not going to be able to fight back again. So you want to make sure that you do get enough distance away from them to give yourself time to recover yourself. But yeah, normally you have plenty of time to do that. So yeah, that is an example of somebody who is willing to hurt you, but there are other types of people as well. Some will outright ignore you, and then some, even though this is rare, they will actually be nice to you whenever you meet them, offering you food and stuff like that. But that's not going to happen for a while. Now it is time to go back to the den. I grab a rat snack along the way, then I just take it with me back inside the den. Whenever you enter the den with an uneaten food, it will automatically be added to your health. So normally I will wait until I get to the den to eat, that way my health bar depletes as much as it is going to over the course of the trip, and then I can eat the food to replenish as much health as I possibly can. If you were to eat before entering the den, it still leaves a little bit of time for the health bar to deplete, so even though it's not saving me a bunch of health, technically eating inside the den can give me a little bit more. And while the rat was not enough in this case, eating inside the den is basically the only way to guarantee that starting the very next night you have full health. Although like I mentioned earlier, if you return too soon to the den, there will be a penalty that's applied to your health bar, taking the night's remaining worth of health depletion and automatically applying it to your health bar. If you take a food source with you back to the den that replenishes enough health, it kind of cancels that out. But yeah, just be careful about ending the night too soon. Tonight we have another event on the map. It is down by the river where we have been seeing the men in hazmat suits. We will make our way down there now, but we will find that two things have happened. The lighthearted one is that there is now a musician playing guitar by the river. He is called the Roamer, and he can be found in a few places throughout the game. Just make note of him for later. The more subtle thing that has happened is we can see the position of the men in hazmat suits has changed. They are further down the river by the broken pipeline that we have seen a few times now. This broken pipe seems to be one of the sources of the river contamination, and they have finally found it. But considering the pipe has been broken the whole game, which is over 8 weeks considering the age of the cubs, that is a long time to be polluting the environment with hazmat suit worthy contaminants. It'll be interesting to look for long-term impacts because of that. For tonight, that is going to be the most eventful thing happening besides the ongoing struggle to survive. Speaking of which, we need some food and to explore the area a little bit more. I start off by going to things that we have already seen previously. The first of which is going to be a berry bush located directly beside the badger den. This is something we have visited plenty of times prior to now, and we already know it is a reliable source of food. After grabbing that though, I start thinking about things we have not covered yet. There are some pretty easy things that we really have not eaten yet, like garbage, which I don't tend to go after very much. Garbage really does not recover very much health, and on top of that the garbage bag has the potential to get wrapped around the fox's neck, which will strangle it and force you into a situation where you have to break out of it, which is not a very hard thing to do, but still. For it to be a potential hazard and also not give you that much health, I would rather just avoid it altogether. Plus there is better food that we have not had yet. So we can go ahead and cross that off of the list tonight. In order to do that, I have to do a little bit of backtracking to the opposite side of the den. And we need to go under the fence again as well. Over in this area we can find a rabbit. It is an elusive animal, so sneaking up on it or trying to chase after it really does not work. We are going to have to trick the rabbit by hiding. There are some nearby bushes that we can jump into, and if we wait there long enough, eventually the rabbit is going to walk by. Then we have the opportunity to jump out and surprise attack. That should allow us to get the rabbit, and they heal a lot of health. So whenever I have the rabbit, I don't want to waste that. I just end up carrying it around for a little while until it's the right time to eat. While on the rabbit hunt, I also realized there is a path that is locked right now, but I can do something to change that. Most of the paths are going to be time-based, unlocking whenever you reach the right night. This one, however, is one that we can control, which means I can unlock it at almost any time. Now I want this route for future use, so I start making my way across the map to the location where I can unlock it. That location is going to be on the other side of a small cliff that I was looking at earlier. It is the one that had a fallen tree just dangling over the edge. And in order for me to reach that location, I'm having to pass by the den one more time. Eventually we're going to find a small ledge that we can jump on, which is going to take us on a path with a few hazards. As I try to get to that location, there is a bear trap in our path. I jump over that one, and the cubs cannot be impacted by the traps, so they are safe. Well, they are at least safe from the trap, because once we get by that, we find an owl is sleeping in a tree. Now the cubs are not safe whenever it comes to the owl, so we need to sneak by it so it does not wake up and go after the cubs. And once I have gotten by all those hazards, we find the tree, and using our body weight, that ends up breaking, And we can then use the broken tree as a bridge, allowing us to go back and forth between the top of the cliff and the bottom. That now gives us a shortcut to where the rabbit was. And after doing that, I have spent almost all the time I have available to accomplish things on this night. I tried going back the way I came through the hazards, but the owl's eyes are definitely open now. There's not going to be any sneaking by him, so I'm not going to go that way anymore. Instead, I go back down the tree to take a safer path back to the den. I'm just trying to avoid backtracking through the owl zone and the bear trap because it will 100% attack the cubs whenever its eyes are open, and that is just more than I want to deal with right now. And right around here, I realized one of my cubs was missing. I have no idea how long it was gone or where it went, but fortunately, it was not in any kind of danger. Whenever I managed to get all the way back to the den, the cub then suddenly returned to me and was completely unharmed. So yeah, on this night I was a terrible parent, and my cub went on a little adventure all by itself. It is now night number 8, and there is something I want to draw your attention to on the map. The thing I really want you to see is where the badger icon is, because on this night it moves. No longer is the badger by its den, it's randomly on a path not too far away from the den. That is going to be an indication of a multi-night event involving the badger. And even though I am pointing out the badger event to you, I actually completely forgot that that badger event was taking place on this night, which is really funny considering how long I was looking at that map. Somehow I completely overlooked that the icon for the badger had moved. So even though that is available to me tonight, I'm not actually going to do it. So it is very lucky for me that this is a multi-night event and I can do it later. So while I was completely forgetting about the badger, I really wanted to go check on a specific path. I was pretty sure that it was still locked and not available on this night, but I wanted to confirm it. Along the way I wanted to secure some food for the cubs, so I go ahead and sneak up on a fish that we can have as a snack later on. Which there is going to be a good amount of food to get me through the early night, so I'm not really too worried about that. In fact, whenever I make it to the berry bush, I go ahead and trade out the fish for a berry because, we are not going to be hurting for food. So I'm just going to keep the health bar as high as I can. And while the cubs are eating the fish, I go ahead and check on the path that I was referring to. There is a gate blocking that path, so it is still locked. Although that grate is going to be removed later on. So in one of the upcoming nights, I should be able to investigate inside of there. The reason this is important is because there is something on the other side that I really want. But yeah, it's locked for right now, so this detour is not super rewarding. But I can still get some more food and meet our minimum goal of surviving. After already securing some fish and some berries, I have the mother fox climb a tree to reach a nearby watchtower. Inside the tower, there is going to be a cooler that we can knock to the ground. The cooler breaks on impact, and whenever we go back to the ground and investigate, we find some human food inside which we take away with us as our reward. The food specifically is going to be an apple, which we already know gives back a bunch of health. And after getting that, keeping in mind that I'm forgetting about the badger, there is not much more to do on this night. I check for anything on this side of the map and there's really nothing. Although there are 2 other things that I can show. Both of those are close together, but they're on a different side of the map. One of the things I really want to show just expands the whole water contamination part of the story that's happening in the background. And the other thing I want to show is an item that's kind of hard to come by and very easy to miss. It is something that we can't get right now, it's something that requires us to have a skill with one of our cubs, and we are going to acquire that skill much later in the game. But still, it is worth showing on a night where there's really not too much else going on. I'm going to take a path back to the road nearby where we escaped the forest fire. And nearby that road, we find that there is a gate that is now open, and we can go in there and explore. So we go ahead and check out the other side, an area that we have not really seen yet. We end up finding that this path leads into a river. Fortunately, the cubs can swim, so they can follow me through it. And while we are swimming through the water, we find that this river is being investigated by the men in hazmat suits. I guess they are seeing how downstream the contamination goes and how bad it is. And after swimming across the water, we find some land, and on here there is going to be a type of food that is one of a kind. In a nearby nest, there is an item literally called the Easter egg, and the egg is going to be a yellow color. And it happens to be the only egg that is that color. Getting this is actually a trophy, so I wanted to point it out. Right now, my cubs do not have the skill necessary to get that egg. It is designed to be a one-of-a-kind item that you can only get later in the game and requires you to backtrack all the way back to the beginning of the game. I do not know right now if I will be coming back for this item later on, so I wanted to at least point it out so that you know about it and you can choose whether or not you want to come back for it yourself. After that though, keeping in mind yet again that I have completely forgotten about the badger, I was under the perception there really was not anything else for me to do on this night. About the most I can do after that, despite the fact that on the previous night I was talking trash about eating garbage, I end up doing just that, stealing some food from a garbage bag, so we can now account for eating that type of food as well. And yeah, that's about the last eventful thing I do. We really don't have a need for any more food tonight, so I start making my way back to the den, just prepared to conclude night number 8. Now we are about to experience what might be the longest night in my entire playthrough. We started off night number 9 with a loading screen telling us something about cub skills, just giving us a hint that those exist. And that hint is very important because that is going to be my main focus tonight. Whenever checking the map, we can see that several different paths have opened up for us. We are going to be taking one of those paths in order to get 2 different cub skills. And with that being my main focus, I immediately start going in that direction. Now the very first cub skill that I am going after is one called the Squeeze Through skill. That is going to allow us to summon the cub to go through really tight spaces. And whenever it comes to getting these skills, they are very time and location specific. To my knowledge, you're not able to learn a cub skill in more than one location. Like there is only going to be one location in the entire game to learn this Squeeze Through ability. So if you want to learn one of these limited abilities, you have to be in the right place at the right time. But then again, there are also some cub skills that you will learn automatically, like the jump and the high jump abilities. You are going to learn those cub skills on a specific night regardless of what you do. I go all the way back to the same spot I was checking out the night before, only now the grate that was blocking our path is out of the way, and I am free to pass through. That takes us to a flooded basement area within the Corp factory. The water is really shallow though, so we can still just walk through the area without there really being any issues, even though it's kind of a mess around here. We climb a pipe to get out of the basement area, and we are now on the Corp property. We continue to side scroll on an elevated metal walkway until we reach a small gap. The mother fox and all but one of the cubs is able to jump across. The very last cub though, it does not make the jump and it falls down below. So I have the mother fox backtrack a little bit and hop down to check on the cub that fell. It is not injured or anything like that, so that's good, but we still have to get the cub out of here. And the cub is not able to jump as high as the adult fox, so it's not going to be able to get out the same way that I entered this area. Instead, we shift our focus to a small gap and some nearby debris. Now that is too small for the mother fox to fit through, but the cub is small enough to squeeze through. And with a shove from its mother, the cub will realize that it can fit, and it is able to escape that way. And with that realization, the cub has learned the Squeeze Through skill. And even though the cub just used that skill to escape, it's really not going to use it for that purpose anymore throughout the game. So for the remainder of the playthrough, that new skill is actually going to come in handy for gathering food. There are going to be times when we find containers with a small gap in them, just like the one we saw in the debris. And just like before, the mother fox cannot fit, but the cub can. So it is able to squeeze through those containers, grab the food, and then come back to the family so everybody gets to eat. So yeah, surviving is made just a little bit easier. In fact, that is what most of the cub skills do, just progressively makes the game easier, usually with food, but also in some other ways. And now that we have one of those skills unlocked, it is time to go after the second one, which is within the factory. Along the way, we see some liquid waste coming from the factory and just being flooded out of the pipes and into a nearby reservoir. We also get to see the hazmat suit guys are investigating that reservoir as well. So it seems like maybe it is this waste that is making it out of the reservoir and then making its way into the local rivers. And it might be doing that through spots like the broken pipe that we saw earlier nearby where the roamer was playing his guitar. That kind of makes sense with the hazmat guys showing up in both locations. Continuing on to the inside of the factory, it is kind of barren around here. We can see some barrels around and occasionally we get to look at some not very specific machinery. On the outside we can see some dumpsters full of trash, but there just really isn't anything that's standing out to me at the moment about this place. And whenever coming here for the very first time, it can be a little bit hard to tell what exactly the Corp factory is doing, especially just whenever we're looking at it from the outside. But once we go inside the factory, we do get to see some big machinery that is ejecting something that kind of looks like blankets or maybe rugs or carpets. I could be wrong about what exactly the material is, but it's doing something like that. And as we continue to explore, the factory just kind of looks like it is falling apart. Like we already saw the one basement area that was completely flooded. There are also some major holes in the factory walls, there is garbage just everywhere, and then there was also the broken pipe outside of the factory grounds that was pouring waste into the water. Just overall, this place is in really rough shape. We also need to be careful around here. Even at night there are workers present, and some of them can be a problem for the foxes, specifically the security. I'm also not 100% sure where this skill is that I'm looking for now, I just know it's in this area somewhere. So I'm kind of just circling the property, checking buildings until I find exactly what I am looking for. What I'm looking for is an underground area where they dump garbage. In that spot where the garbage is piling up, that is where we are going to learn our next skill. Speaking of which, the second skill is going to be the dig skill. A different cub this time is going to realize there is food beneath the ground, or sometimes also beneath junk. Upon making that realization, the cub can dig out some grubs or some worms, which is a pretty good source of health. It does not bring back a lot, but we can find plenty of areas throughout the game where this digging ability can come into play. And with that, we now have 2 cub skills under our belt and we are nearly done here. Plus our survivability has just gone up a good amount. So we start to leave the Corp area, we end up passing by one of their box trucks and a few more of their barrels, and we make our way to the exit, which is where the locked door that we were previously unable to get through, well, it turns out it is now open. We also find a scent by that open door, which is coming from the broken chains on the ground. We sniff that over and we find that the scavenger still has our cub. He ended up using bolt cutters to break the chains on the door and trespass onto the property. A short distance away, we find the second scent is coming from a broken drone, exactly like the drone that caught the scavenger on the same night when we first discovered the den. That scent reveals the scavenger shot down the drone whenever he entered the property, making sure he would not get caught by it again. It is actually kind of fortunate that I was using this gate in order to leave the factory grounds because I kind of forgot about these scents, and I easily could have just missed them on this night had I not walked by them. Further down the path, we find the final scent is coming from a long rope, which is dangling down to the ground from a second-story window that is open. Investigating reveals that the scavenger was using that rope in order to reach the open second-story window and break into the factory. And just as the scent dissipates, we see the scavenger escaping the building, likely having stolen something of value from inside. Even though we were close to him in this moment, we're not going to be able to catch up. So saving the cub is going to have to happen on another day. Speaking of day, everything that was on our to-do list was supposed to happen at night. It is now broad daylight in the morning and we need to get back to the den. Being out this long means we are going to go to sleep with a health deficit for really the very first time in this playthrough, but that's fine. To minimize that deficit as much as I can, I do take my time before going back to the den. What I end up doing is just wandering around the factory grounds a little bit more. I start looking for food in the garbage, and I also start hunting a rat. None of this is really going to prevent me from having a little bit of health missing from the health bar whenever we do return to the den, but it should at least make sure that I am over half health whenever returning to the den. And that should leave us in pretty good position for night number 10. And I should mention that even though I am risking this right now, continuing to hunt for food whenever the sun comes up becomes much more risky as the game goes on. We don't have as many threats right now, but later in the game, more things are going to be hostile towards the fox, and those people become much more active whenever the sun comes up. Oh, I almost forgot. Along the way, we end up finding the badger that has a den nearby us. It turns out it has been caught inside of a trap and it cannot get out. Finding this is very important, because if you end up missing it, it has very major negative impacts on the story. And fortunately, even though I kind of forgot about the previous night and for most of this night, I did end up finding the badger, and now we get to free her, and whenever she ends up leaving the trap, she briefly looks back at us in gratitude. Now that we have saved her, we get to see the badger on later nights. And I mentioned earlier that there had to be a way to sneak around the badger whenever she was at her den protecting the food that was immediately outside of her den. Well, there might be more ways to do it, but whenever she is stuck in that trap, and even just after we release her from the trap, she's not going to be nearby the den to protect that food. So if you want to get it, this is going to be the easiest time to go get that food. Now, I'm not going to bother with that, but I wanted to bring it up just in case it's of interest to you. So yeah, that's going to do it for night number 9. We ended up gaining 2 new cub skills, but we still have several more to find on later nights. We also ended up finding all the available scents tonight, and we also saved the badger. So overall, a really productive night for what's probably going to be the longest night of the entire playthrough. Okay, so it turns out the tremors that we heard were coming from the top of the radio tower collapsing. When we go outside, we can see the rubbish nearby the den, and fortunately that is not going to be blocking our path. But unfortunately, what is going to be blocking our path is a random person that is checking out the damage. That person is going to be hostile and will try to kill the mother fox if he sees us. In fact, he does just that. And I can fight him off though, so that's alright. I was just trying to get him to move out of the way, but even after our scuffle, he does not move. And now I am hurt and I'm not going to be able to defend myself for a while. Just a reminder, if I end up getting grabbed by a human while the mother fox is limping, that would be an instant death. So I will do my best to avoid that human for now, and I'm just going to have to go a different way. The reason I wanted to go in that direction was I wanted to go visit the badger, but I guess that can wait a little while. Instead, we can take the long way around and try to find as many different types of food as we can. We kind of passed one by the previous night because of how much stuff I was trying to squeeze into one night, but now that I have to go the long way and I have some time to kill, well, it sounds like a good time to go ahead and backtrack and get that different type of food. And fortunately, the type of food I'm referring to is available pretty much the entire game, so no big deal waiting until tonight. And also the food I'm going after, it is uncommon. And it is going to be some mushrooms or maybe just some fungus in general, but yeah. But as far as I'm aware, the flooded basement back at the Corp factory is the only place where we can get these mushrooms. Along the way, I do stop by the berry bush to have a little bit of food before we actually reach our main destination, and I also check out a digging site that I'm going to be coming back to. Once we are back inside the flooded basement, we see there is a fence in there, and there is a small gap at the very bottom of it. After yesterday, our cub now knows the squeeze through skill, so now the cub can go through that hole in the fence. And once the cub does go onto the other side of that fence, he is able to retrieve the mushrooms and bring them back out to the rest of the family. Now that is only going to be the type of food in this location, because in others, the food that's on the other side of those gaps is a little bit different. I think more often than not, it's going to be some kind of canned food, maybe some dog food or something like that. And like I said earlier, the mushrooms, I think they are only limited to this area, although let me know if I'm wrong. And now after having the cub get the mushrooms, we can now cross that off of our list. While I am still in this area, go ahead and go back to the digging spot that we saw earlier, and I have the cub dig up a grub for the rest of the family to snack on. Now that I am thinking about it, we are not going to be in the river area much longer, so I may as well start using up all these resources. Now that we have collected some food and have that knocked out, we have a couple of different ways of getting around the hostile human that was previously in our way. We could use the shortcut that we unlocked on one of the previous nights whenever we broke the tree on the cliffside, but I am going to use a different one because I can get around him as well by going onto the Corp factory and heading over to the fence. Whenever I get to the perimeter fence, it turns out that we can get out that way as well, just going underneath the fence by digging. So that gives us 2 different paths in order to get around that random human. And now that we have a way of getting around him and really all the other hazards that could possibly be blocking us, we are going to be able to reach the badger den and see how she is doing after being trapped. Once we do manage to make our way all the way over there, we find that she is behaving a little bit differently, because we're not immediately getting chased away like we normally would be. Instead, the badger decides to say thank you in its own way, leaving food on the ground for the cubs. And after saving the badger from the trap, that can happen once a night going forward. It's not going to happen every single night for the rest of the game, but it at least should last for the remainder of the time that we are in this river area. So yeah, this is the beginning of a good friendship. With that little visit out of the way, that's really all I wanted to do on this night. Whenever we go back to the den, we will find that the human is now gone, and we are free to complete the night without having to deal with him again. Or, well, at least I know he's not going to be there to be a threat after having played through the game. Whenever I was playing this in real time, I was not 100% sure whether or not that human would still be there or not, which is why I ended up going a little bit slow whenever I first started approaching the den again. I just wanted to make sure that that was not going to be a hazard again that was going to force me to have to go the long way around to the opposite side of the den. Fortunately, that human is not there, so I can go directly to the den and not have to do any sort of weird backtracking. And thus concludes night number 10. Alright, on night number 11, the human that was hanging out outside of the den yesterday is no longer there, and to my knowledge, he never comes back. So tonight is already off to an easier start right out of the den. Although I should say, all because that human doesn't come back doesn't mean there are no other humans in the area that are going to cause us problems. If you spend too much time outside of the den and the sun starts to come up, there are going to be some humans around that can cause you some problems. Now, this early in the game, they're not going to be too much of a threat, but they are still going to be around. And then there are some humans that are guaranteed to still be around regardless of the time of day. And the ones that I am thinking of are going to be the ones on the Fisherman's Island. Which that is going to be relevant tonight because that's going to be one of our destinations. And while I am here, even though I really don't need the food as far as my health is concerned, we do say hello to the badger again. And being just as friendly as she was before right after being saved, she gives us our 1 per night dose of food, and then we continue on through the snow to explore the area a little bit more. And also happening tonight, this is going to be the very last night that we are going to be in the river area. After this, we are going to be abandoning our current den and finding a new one. So on the very next night, we are going to be moving to the very next area. And there's not really going to be too much of a reason to return here to the river area. In fact, even right now, there's not too much going on. We basically found everything in this area for the time being. Anything else worth seeing in this area really requires me to come back later on in the game, which may or may not happen in this playthrough, but that's way down the road anyway. For tonight, it is really going to be much less about exploring and much more about just getting some food and spending one last night here saying goodbye to the area. Well, and also trying to avoid this really annoying guy on the Fisherman's Island while I try to collect some food. This is going to be one of the hostile humans that's around pretty much all the time. And I just have to try sneaking by him if I want any food on this island. And yeah, he's being a little annoying today. Also, ever since night number 1, it has been snowing out here. This is also going to be one of the very last nights where we are going to be seeing this snowy setting. Whenever we move locations, the weather is going to change as well. And since we have time to kill, I suppose this is going to be a good time to go on a little bit of a tangent. Because I became curious after seeing how active we had to be during the winter as the fox and the cubs. So I had to look it up, just how active are foxes really in a winter setting like this? Well, it turns out foxes do not hibernate. They remain active the entire winter. So that part is actually kind of accurate. And then I began to wonder about the other animals that we have been interacting with throughout the winter. And that includes our badger friend. So I had to look up badgers as well. Are they active all winter? Do they hibernate? And the answer is, well, badgers don't really hibernate either. They can become inactive for long periods of time, but according to what I looked up, they continue to leave their dens and get food throughout the winter. So they're more inactive overall when compared to foxes, but they still remain active all winter. So yeah, overall, us running around in the snowy season all the time, that's not inaccurate. I just thought that was interesting and worth sharing. So hopefully you have enjoyed this random nature facts moment in this playthrough of Endling. And now, let's get back to the actual events taking place in the game. At this point, I am basically done with my follow-up exploration of the Fisherman's Island. In fact, just overall, I'm pretty much done with this night. All I really need to do is leave the island and make my way back to the den. But yeah, while I was on the island, I was just collecting food, I got some berries, and I had a little bit of trouble hunting a rat. Like every time I got close to it, it was bailing out and running away from me. And even my attempts to sneak up on it were not going the greatest, but eventually I did get the rodent, and the fox family's bellies are full. Whenever I do leave the Fisherman's Island, I'll make one more pit stop at another berry bush that I am aware of, that way I have a little bit of extra food on the way back to the den. But other than that, this should be a pretty standard return to the den. I'm just basically going to be following the exact same path that I took previously. I'm going to go back down the same trail as before to the badger's den, pass by that, go to the pipe we've been using as a bridge, and return to the den that way. And even though it's getting close to the sun coming up, there really shouldn't be any other humans running around right now besides the one we already saw on the Fisherman's Island. So as long as I don't run into any bear traps or something like that, this should be a pretty chill conclusion to the night. But yeah, that is going to do it for night number 11, and that's going to do it for the river area. Starting tomorrow, it is time to venture somewhere new. Now on night number 12, a new path has opened up and it is time to leave the river area. Of course, we could always return here later on, but kind of like driving by your old childhood home, you feel both nostalgic for it, but you're also reminded of how crappy the place you used to live really is. But even so, the future dens we end up occupying are not that much better. But at least we get some new scenery. Also on night number 12, we are going to find some new scents to give us clues about where our cub is. Those are actually going to be what leads us out of the river area. And along the way as we follow those, we're going to see some signs pointing in the direction that we are going. Each of the signs is going to say Refugee Camp. Now we're not going to see that camp for a pretty long time, but eventually we are going to find it. And these signs are just a way of letting us know to keep that in mind. And as we continue to follow the signs and follow the scents, we return to the part of the river that had the broken pipe. Only now that broken pipeline has been built over to create a makeshift bridge. And the very first scent is going to come from the material that was used on the bridge. Investigating it, we can see the scavenger converted his boat into a cart. He is using that to wheel around his belongings and our missing cub. So it appears they crossed the bridge going towards the refugee camp. The second scent is going to come from more material that was on the cart. The scene it provides us with indicates which path the scavenger took, so we can continue to follow him. Oh, and you might notice that I am skipping food the entire time that I'm on this path. That's because once I reach the very end, we're going to be given some food, so I really don't need to take any from anywhere else. The third and final scent is going to come from a turbine which has fallen in the woods. We investigate and we see a scene where the scavenger was ripping off a propeller. And that is where the trail goes cold. But the scavenger inadvertently gave us an entrance inside the turbine. So we go ahead and we step inside, and this is going to be our second den inside the forest area. With that cutscene, we have experienced a change in the season. Despite this being listed as night 13, like only one night passed between night 12 and night 13. But that was somehow long enough for all the snow to melt and all the trees are now full of leaves again. So much more time has passed than just saying night 13 would imply. To me, that seems to suggest that the game is only counting the nights where the player is in control of the fox. It's not actually counting the literal number of nights that have passed since the game began. Because in one night, basically weeks or maybe even months have passed. Also, that cutscene revealed the deceased body of a person who was buried beneath the snow. I was curious if it was a human that we have encountered previously, or maybe if it was somebody who'd be referenced later in the game. I went back and paused that cutscene just to get a really good look, but this seems to just be a random person, at least as far as I'm aware. I initially thought it was the guy hanging out outside of our first den after the radio tower fell down, but the clothes are a little bit different. So I guess this was just a random refugee. Regarding what we are doing on night 13, I checked the map and I saw a yellow question mark, which as I mentioned previously indicates an event is taking place and I want to check that out. I traveled around the woodland area trying to reach that event, and it gave me the chance to scout out the new area. Right now it is mostly just woods, but we do see a farm in the background as well, but we cannot reach that location yet. We will eventually get access to that farm, but we have some nights to finish before that happens. Off the top of my head, that farm is going to be a really solid source of food, and it provides a path to a new cub skill, but I will cover all of that whenever the right nights come up. On this night, I got a little bit confused when trying to reach the event, since there does not seem to be a direct path available to me to reach that question mark. Then I realized I could see the event from a distance, so I climbed a tree to get a better look. For the first time, we see the scavenger in a sympathetic light. From the tree, we saw him at a stump that was decorated and turned into a makeshift grave. A picture can just barely be seen on the stump at a distance, but it is clear the scavenger lost someone he cared about and is now in mourning. We will make note of that because it's definitely going to come back up again. Which that event is really the only noteworthy thing I have to show here on night number 13. Besides that event, I just recommend taking a look around and enjoying how peaceful and tranquil these woods are. Everything is a luscious green, there are no real apparent threats to us, and everything's just all around probably the nicest it has been the entire game. And not to give anything away just yet, but even when compared to all the nights to come for the rest of the game, this still might be the nicest night, because after night 13, things do begin to change around here drastically. And I do take my time whenever returning back to the den, mostly because I'm still kind of feeling out the area. With this being my first night in the woods and not having played through the game in a little while, I was refamiliarizing myself with the area, and just taking my time figuring out how exactly to get back to the den. I was trying to avoid going back to the map considering how much I was going back and forth between the map at the very beginning of the night. I figured if I kept going back to the map every 10 seconds or so, it probably wouldn't be the greatest video to watch, so I'm trying to avoid that. But yeah, as far as anything else mention-worthy on this night, I guess I haven't really talked about the survival aspect of it for food. I really haven't gone out of my way for too much whenever I was up in the tree watching the scavenger mourning his deceased. I did pick up an egg that was in a nest up there with me. Besides that egg though, I go out my way to pick up berries in a couple of bushes. And I take one of those berries with me all the way back to the den, that way we can snack on it as we conclude the night. But yeah, once we do get back to the den, we go ahead and rest up and we prepare ourselves for night number 14. And as night number 14 starts to load up, we get a warning of serious danger. The warning tells us that a single gunshot will kill us. With that being said, night 14 is the very first night the scavenger will be hunting with his rifle, which I believe is the only gun that can be used against us in the entire game. We even hear the echoes of a gunshot just as the night begins, really making it clear to us that this weapon is in use somewhere in the woods. In spite of the dire warning and the obvious danger, I'm going to investigate the gunshot, because it comes with a reward for braving the danger and surviving. That will also be true on other nights as well. Once we are close enough to view the scavenger from behind cover, we can see he has attached a flashlight to his rifle. That is going to be one of our visual indications of where he is looking and what direction he is ready to shoot in. We also have to pay attention to his face. If his gas mask is still somewhat faced in your direction, even if the flashlight moves for a moment, he may still be looking in your direction. But the visual indication of what we are looking for is whenever he's not looking in our direction, and also the flashlight is not pointed in our direction. If both of those are facing the direction that we want to travel, that's where he's going to shoot. But if you wait long enough, he will eventually change the direction that he's focused on. So this is going to be about stealth. Wait until that light is no longer pointed at you and he's no longer looking in our direction. And as soon as that happens, you need to walk to the very next patch of cover. And we're just going to keep trying to stay hidden and keep advancing. But again, you have to walk, do not run. If you run, the scavenger will hear you, and then quickly look back and shoot. Only run if you are already nearly behind cover, and he is about to look back in your direction anyway. That should be a last resort though. I continue sneaking in a circle around him until I eventually find our reward. The gunshot we heard earlier was the scavenger killing a rabbit, only he did not immediately grab the rabbit after shooting it. So once he is looking away, I come out from behind cover, I grab the rabbit, and I hold on to that to eventually feed the cubs. Rabbits heal more health than most of the other types of food in the game. It would definitely heal more health than I have lost right now, so I don't want to feed them immediately. Instead, I have the entire family sneak back down the exact same path that we just came from. I should mention that the scavenger can only shoot the mother fox, so assume that the cubs are lagging behind you. Even if the hunter's flashlight is shining on the cubs as they try to catch back up to you, they are never going to be in danger of gunshots. The scavenger only cares about the adult. So yeah, that is a new threat from the scavenger, but he is not the only new threat. There is someone else in these woods hunting animals just like us. Only instead of a gun, he is using a hatchet. This other person that we haven't seen yet is called the Furrier. Based on his name, he is collecting the pelts of animals. We first encounter him whenever trying to return to our den. He is directly outside of the den and he has just killed a rabbit. Once he sees us though, we become the center of his attention, making us his next target. Before I get any closer to him and confront him, I go ahead and feed the cubs, and I mentally prepare myself for the fight. Because I am going to have to fend off that Furrier if I want to get back to the den the shortest way possible. And defending yourself is just going to be button mashing. If I hit the required button fast enough, I will successfully defend myself, and I will bite the Furrier, temporarily wounding him, but also the encounter leaves me hurt as well. The difference between our recoveries is that the Furrier stands still, so he won't chase after me until he fully recovers, but that also means I believe he recovers faster than I do. I have the benefit of being able to move while hurt, so I need to move away from him immediately and leave him behind while he is still stationary. During this encounter though, I do try to go back and take his rabbit, but I was not able to pick it up. I'm not sure if that was because I was hurt or if maybe this rabbit just isn't possible for me to collect, but I figured it was worth a try. I will not be going back for that rabbit, and defending myself successfully is how we are going to end Night 14. Night 15 brings with it the suggestion about marking spots to distract the Furrier. Now he is going to be roaming the map from this night forward. He becomes the most active whenever the sun is coming up. If you mark a spot, it guarantees that is where he is eventually going to be whenever the sun comes up. That gives you the benefit of knowing where he will be, and you can more easily avoid him. At least in theory. I don't really do this very much because they always seem to be on the path that I want to be traveling anyway. So instead of it being a distraction, it really just puts him in my path. But still, that is a good option if they are not in the path that you want to travel. Also on Night 15, we have more scents to help us in our quest to get our missing cub. Checking the map, this night also unlocks more paths for us to investigate. But I will prioritize the scents for now, and while investigating those, we can notice the world changing around us. We have only controlled the fox in the woodland area for 2 nights. And that is 2 nights since the season changed, but already there are some more drastic differences. The change I'm referring to in the woods around us is many trees have been cut down. So humans are clearing out the fox's new home and leaving the area much more bare. And this change is only going to continue and become more drastic with time. The first scent that we investigate comes from one of the blankets that we saw produced in the Corp factory. When investigating that scent, it reveals a scene where the stolen cub is being handled by the scavenger, specifically being handled in a blanket. It seems he was grabbed in that blanket whenever he was removed from its cage. The second scent is coming from another Corp blanket. This scene reveals that the scavenger discarded this blanket as well. We see that happen while he was holding the caged cub, and while also holding even more rolled up blankets. To get to the very last scent, we need to pass by a house hidden deep in the woods. We pass by the house and we find that on the other side of a tire swing, the scent is coming from the cage and one more blanket. This is a trap though. We see the scavenger's flashlight is illuminating the blanket and the cage. Stepping closer results in a gunshot that misses the fox. But the scavenger is ready to shoot, and we are stuck hiding behind the tree. We cannot go forward, and we cannot go backward. With that realization, a new path opens up and we are able to climb the tree. So it is time to climb. And out of this desperate necessity, one of the cubs learns a new cub skill. And that cub can now climb up with us. By climbing the tree, we can reach the balcony of the house. This is where we get to meet Molly for the very first time. And Molly is kind enough to feed us. She is the scavenger's daughter and will be a recurring character going forward. The scavenger went to check on Molly after we disappeared, so she did not stick around long with her father going to check up on her. Still, that means the blanket and the cage are now unattended to, and we can get the very last clue of the night. The last scene we see is the scavenger staging the cage and the blanket with his rifle in hand. So getting trapped behind the tree was not a coincidence, and it was not bad luck. The scavenger was deliberately getting the cub scent on the blankets, knowing we would follow it if he left a trail. If we followed one blanket at a time, all he would have to do was wait with his gun until we reached the very last blanket. And then while we were investigating, he would have a good shot. That nearly worked too, but we got really lucky. After that, we are done for the night. There are a couple of things by the scavenger's house that are mention-worthy, one of which I don't investigate, but I'm going to go ahead and describe it here. There is a sign by the scavenger's house, and it's a notice of demolition. So it seems with all the deforestation starting to take place, that the scavenger's home is in the way. And for one reason or another, he does not get to retain his house, and it's going to be demolished for the deforestation project. The other thing that we notice around the house is that we can open up some debris nearby. This opens up a new path for us, and it also reveals a dead rat that was hidden inside the debris. So that's an additional benefit for opening up that path. And then we have a clear trail all the way back to the den. Along the way though, we do see plenty of people working in the woods around the fallen trees, just turning that into lumber. Get used to seeing them and even more people as time goes on. Oh, and once we are back in the den, we can now see one of the Corp blankets in there with us, implying the mother fox took one of the blankets back there with her because it smells like her cub. That is a good detail to add, and a good way of keeping us reminded of the #1 goal of the game, getting the little fox back. On night 16, we have even more paths unlocking for us courtesy of the deforestation around us. Now, destruction to the environment and losing the forest, that is pretty bad for surviving long term, but it does give us additional places to explore in the short term. And before exploring those, let's go say hello to our new friend Molly. Now, Molly is nice enough to feed us again whenever we go to see her, and we even let Molly pet the mother fox as a thank you. While doing all of that, we get the opportunity to look at Molly's drawing on the wall. There she has colored a picture of her father, herself, and her mother. The mother is the only member of the family we have not seen. Well, kind of. With only a 3-person family, we now know that it was her mother that the scavenger was mourning at the grave. The cause of death is never really revealed, but her death does seem recent. Considering the contamination of the water supply that we also saw recently, and how everyone, including Molly and the scavenger, are wearing gas masks, it seems likely the death may have been caused by environmental factors. Then consider the medicine we saw the scavenger stealing before. That may have been for her. It also could have been for Molly, or maybe even both. It's hard to say at this point in the story. After leaving Molly and letting her get back to her drawing, we can see the scavenger out hunting again. We won't be getting near him tonight though. Instead, I go looking around the fence line of the farm. I was not sure which night we would be able to access the farm, so I was going out of my way to check on that fence line from time to time. Unfortunately, this is not the night for that, so this trip is a little bit pointless. I suppose while I am here, I can point out that if I continue down this path, I will eventually reach a dead end, which is going to be a bunch of stacked up trees to be used as lumber blocking the path. That will eventually go away, but we are many nights away from that. So I have to head back in the direction of the farm, and we're just going to have to keep that in mind for future nights. Eventually we will be returning here to advance to a new area. But for the time being tonight, there's really not too much more for us to do other than just survive. Which we are doing a pretty good job of considering we got food from Molly and we just picked up some berries. We don't really find any new types of food. At most, I get a rat to eat, and I run into a gas mask wearing guard walking around the area. I leave and let him get back to his work. Since there is nothing I can do to get inside the farm and nothing else major is going on, I decide to start returning to the den, that way I can wrap up tonight. We are just going to avoid the scavenger so there is no risk of us getting shot. Now the sun is not coming up yet, so the Furrier really should not be out and should not get in our way. But still, I remain a little bit cautious. I slow down occasionally just to look around the area, making sure I'm not about to run into somebody that's going to try and hurt me. And on that note, we do see people working in the woods around us. For the most part, they are just going to ignore the foxes. I think there are a couple of them that may try to hurt the foxes, but overall, we really don't have much to worry about unless the sun is coming up, which makes this a pretty easy and safe trip back to the den. And after managing to get back safely, this is where we conclude night number 16. Okay, night number 17 is a big one. The map is going to show 2 events very close to the scavenger, and I am going to be checking those out. This is very important, and it has long-lasting impacts on the story. With that in mind, I do not waste any time. I start cutting through the forest, which has been turned into a lumber yard. Once I get close to the scavenger, I am going to find our old friend the badger, only now she is not alone. The badger has since had a cub of her own, and we are seeing it for the very first time. So it turns out saving her before whenever she was trapped, that also saved her baby. But now they both need our help again. The mother looks like she fell from the ledge above, maybe while running away from the scavenger's gunshots. Now she is hurt as a result, and her cub is stuck on the ledge. It is too high for the baby badger to jump down, and the mother badger is too hurt to go back up. So we are stepping in, and we are going to get the baby badger to safety. Now, due to the deforestation, we do not have any more trees to hide behind, but we still have some bushes, some stumps, and rocks, and occasionally some other junk to work with. We can use the same stealth tactics as before, waiting for the flashlight to point elsewhere, and then walk to the next area of cover for safety, and we continue doing that as we advance towards the badger cub. Similar to when we were going after the rabbit, we are going to have to make a full circle around the scavenger. Whenever we accomplish that, we are going to reach the badger cub on the ledge. Now, it does not know us and it does not trust us, so it's not going to follow the mother fox like her own cubs do. We are going to have to pick up the badger cub and carry it around. Doing so gives us some limitations in our movement options though. Like, we cannot just jump down the ledge whenever we are carrying the baby badger. While we are carrying it, we are going to have to go all the way back around the scavenger one more time. Fortunately, while carrying the badger cub, and actually if I were to be carrying one of my own cubs, that does not really change anything whenever it comes to these stealth mechanics here. The gimmick functions exactly the same as before. We just have to be patient and then walk whenever the light is no longer pointed in our direction. And fortunately, at this point in the game, they have not started introducing traps yet around the scavenger. On future nights, whenever trying to get around the scavenger sneaking by him, we will occasionally see traps in the gaps between cover. So not only do I have to sneak between one piece of cover to the next, I also have to jump over those and not get stuck. But for right now, the only disadvantage I have is carrying around the baby badger, which is not too much of a disadvantage. And I'm about halfway through the circle now, so things are going pretty good. Also, even though we can hear the baby badger crying occasionally, the scavenger does not seem to hear that and just completely ignores it. But also will somehow hear me if I start running, so selective hearing. As a tiny amount of extra incentive to do this rescue, we find an apple on the ground as we are walking around the scavenger and trying to return to the adult badger. That is going to get us back to full health, which is pretty nice because I had completely forgotten about this free food. So getting that while I am doing this rescue, that is a pretty nice perk, especially considering we dedicate a good amount of the night to the rescue. So we are sacrificing time that we could have been using for foraging and surviving on our own. That is going to reduce the amount of food that we have to try and hurry and find after doing this. Alright, now the badgers are reunited. The mother is too hurt for them to leave together immediately, but she is not fatally wounded. She will just need a moment longer before they can get away. We will be seeing them again in the nights to come. For now, I leave them to rest, And with a little bit of time before the sun rises, I decide to go exploring a little bit more, seeing what I can find, and more specifically, going back to the farm and seeing what that fence line looks like, seeing if I can find a way inside. And just a heads up, the area I'm about to check out, in previous nights it was flooded, but now that water has receded, and I discover that we can access the farm for the very first time. I have been referring to it as the farm, but this is the Chirping Chick Company, and they advertise that they have certified quality products. We will be seeing about that quality in the very near future. Right now though, the Furrier saw us on the farm grounds and he chased after us. I accidentally run into a dead end and I have no choice but to fight him off. After biting him, he steps aside to recover and I have to limp away hurt. I wanted to explore more, but since I am hurt and the Furrier is around and the sun is coming up, I think it is better just to call it and consider night 17 complete. We just need to get back to the den before the Furrier can catch up to us again. And as long as I don't walk into any more dead ends, and I just continue to take the path directly back to the den, he should not be able to catch up. I will also eventually be able to recover and run again too, so my safety is further guaranteed. I will also avoid the Scavenger this time around, not wanting any reason to slow down at all, because I do not want the Furrier to have any chances to catch up. So I guess I really didn't take the direct route back to the den, opting for a slightly longer trip. Well, actually, now that I am thinking about it, considering I would have to stop and then sneak around the Scavenger, even though distance-wise the path I am now taking may be longer, time-wise it might be a little bit faster. Because I'm not having to stop and wait for the Scavenger to look away so I can sneak around him. In this case, even though it is a longer distance, I don't have to stop and I can just run straight to the den. So maybe this path is longer, maybe it's not. Well, maybe I should just say the distance is longer, but the time to get to the den is faster. Whereas with the route that would cause me to go by the Scavenger, that distance is shorter, but the time would take longer. I didn't exactly time this, so I'm really assuming a lot here, but I think that is the case. But I do believe that made the trip safer, and we return to the den to eventually see night number 18. On night number 18, we pick up the scent of our stolen cub again. Immediately we follow the scent through all the construction equipment, and also through the lumber yard that now surrounds our den. As we start to do so, we can briefly get a glimpse of the Scavenger's house in the distance, and for the time being it is still standing even though there is a notice of demolition. It has not happened yet. In fact, having played through the entire game after this, I went all the way back to that house on the very last night of the playthrough, because I was curious what exactly it would look like after all this time. And oddly enough, even though there is a notice of demolition, they never fully tear down the house. Granted, it is starting to fall apart and it's not occupied anymore, but it is still there. Eventually, we are going to be near the perimeter of the farm. That is where we find the first scent is coming from a bowl. It reveals a scene where the Scavenger is dragging away our cub in a cage. The bowl was probably used for food or water, but then fell out of the cage. Beside the Scavenger was Molly, though. She was distraught, clutching a teddy bear and trying to get the fox back from her father. We then continue our travel and pass by all the woodsmen who are too distracted by their work to bother us. Along the way, the badger exits her new den to show us something after we helped it out. Also, the den that she just left, it can be used as a shortcut to quick travel across the map. I don't use that very much, but it can be helpful, especially when trying to avoid the Furrier. While I follow the badger, I also have one of the cubs use the squeeze through skill to get some more food. I think it is canned dog food and it fully heals us. Now that we are no longer dealing with low health, I need to catch back up with the badger and avoid the upcoming bear trap. After that, we see the badger knock down some boards in the fence, giving us a new entrance and exit from the farm. Directly beside that, we find the next scent is coming from Molly's teddy bear. It was left on the ground, and its scene shows that Molly lost the teddy bear while actively trying to stop her dad and take the fox back. This is something he prevents by using his height to his advantage and holding the cage up so it's out of her reach. After that, the very last scent is just a short distance away. It is going to be beside the large lumber stacks that are blocking our path, the one that I showed you earlier. The source of the scent is going to be some posters on the ground, and the scene it reveals gives us a closer look at one of the posters. It has a cash offer on it, a reward for pelts. The scavenger holds up the poster for Molly to see, explaining his intent to sell our cub for its fur. We can now see why Molly was so upset and wanted her fox back. Only in that very last scene, we saw a much calmer Molly holding the fox in its cage. It would seem that some of her pleas to keep the fox may have gotten through to her father, but he is still interested in the money. Those are going to be all the scents that we can follow tonight though, so we're going to have to wait to see what comes next. Before returning to the den, I decided to go exploring the Chirping Chick Company a little bit more. I think this area is where the very first chicken is available to us. It is a type of food that I have not fed the cubs yet in this playthrough. And getting a chicken is a trophy or an achievement, so it is worth getting a little bit sidetracked to find that type of food. Once on the Chirping Chick Company grounds and traveling over the roof, I get to check out a different side of the production warehouse. That is also where we are going to find a way inside. This part of the warehouse has chickens hanging by their feet, and they are moving on an automated production line. Only we find that one of those chickens happens to slip out of its bindings. It then tries to escape whenever it lands on the ground. We are in no position to turn away food whenever the opportunity comes up though, so I stop the chicken's escape and I keep it for food for the cubs. I'll give it to them whenever we return to the den. Speaking of which, this night is nearly over, so I really need to start making my way back to the den right now. The Chirping Chicken Company has more for us to explore though, so I will be returning. Now the Chirping Chick Company has some guards that will occasionally do walkarounds of the property, so I do need to be aware of that whenever I try to leave this area. Also, the cubs are not able to jump up or down large ledges yet, so right now the mother fox is by herself. I need to make sure I go back the exact same path as before, that way the cubs see me and start following me again. If I go down a different path, they may not see me, and then they become lost, and then I cannot go back inside the den even if I make it all the way back. I would then have to backtrack, go back and find the cubs, and do the entire trip over again. That is a pretty good time sink, and doing all of that only increases the odds of me running into some kind of danger. So yeah, make sure you do not inadvertently abandon your cubs. I have definitely done that in previous playthroughs, and it is a pretty big waste of time, so try to avoid that. Also, just try to be a good parent. Clearly I wasn't. On the way back to the den, we get cut off by the Furrier again in the same spot as before. And just like before, we give him a much-deserved bite, he lets us go, and then we leave him behind. Like I mentioned before, he tends to show up frequently whenever the sun is coming up. So be sure to expect that and try to choose paths back to the den that have very few obstacles or dead ends. Since we now cannot fight back for a while after biting him, we really don't want anything to slow down our escape. And I don't entirely remember why I did this, but just prior to running into the Furrier, I dropped the chicken and let the cubs eat it before returning to the den. That was definitely earlier than I originally intended. Still, our health is going to be pretty good. And I even end up grabbing a rat just for good measure. Which, with the wonderful gift of hindsight and being able to review this footage, I can now see that the chicken was not going to fully heal me. In fact, whenever we did eat it, it did not even bring me back to full health. So considering that it was going to give me much less health in return for eating it than I originally thought it was going to, it's actually probably a really good thing that I ate it when I did, making me realize that my health was not full, and then encouraging me to hunt down something else. And now whenever it comes to our health, we are going to be in pretty good position whenever we do start the very next night. Granted, I don't think we would have been in terrible condition either way, but still, I would still always prefer to have more health. But yeah, after that chicken dinner, we can now conclude night number 18. Also, from this night forward, we can see Molly's teddy bear in the den. It seems like the mother fox brought it back as a reminder of her stolen cub, possibly also smelling like the cub. But it is also a reminder of the one human in this game that has been kind to the foxes so far. Okay, even though we have gone to the Chirping Chicken Company a couple of times now, night number 19 is going to be mostly me exploring that property. I'm not really going to be doing much of anything else. So yeah, this exploration is going to be a lot like the movie Chicken Run, if it was a lot less comically outlandish and a lot more depressing and full of harsh reality. Before going back to the farm's warehouse though, I do make note of 3 different events happening on this night. I took a moment to consider the order that I should go in to try reaching all 3 of them in one night and not miss anything. Despite me reviewing the map for a moment, I do mess up the route. I end up going the wrong way, and I end up unnecessarily sneaking around the Scavenger's hunting area. I do not actually need the fox to be traveling in this circle, so this will end up being a pretty good amount of time wasted, and some additional risk being added that I really did not need. So yeah, what I mean to do here is start off inside of the Chirping Chicken Company's property. Also, this is me while I'm editing the video. I make a mistake, I keep saying the Chirping Chicken Company when it's just the Chirping Chick Company, so get ready to hear that a bunch. I can go find the event that's also happening in there. And there are also just some things I really want to show in there that add to the world building process. But yeah, I got mixed up, took a little bit of time, so even though I still end up reaching the warehouse, it takes a little bit longer than I intended. An additional reason why I want to start in the Chirping Chicken Company's property is because there is a path somewhere in there that leads to a neighboring house. And at that house, one of the cubs can learn a new cub skill. In real time, whenever I was playing this part of the game to get this footage, I could not remember exactly where that path was. So this was also a way of scouting out that path and trying to find it. Fortunately for me, that cub skill is not a one-night event, I can get it at many different points. So I could afford to take my time finding the way there. And okay, after getting really sidetracked, we are now back inside the Chirping Chicken Company, and I need to get back inside the warehouse. In order for me to do that, I'm going to do the exact same thing as before. I am going to be using the roof to cross over to the opposite side of the warehouse. And once I am over there, I am going to find another passageway where I can walk out onto a beam, getting a bird's eye view of the entire production process within this little factory area. From there, I'm going to get to witness the entire automated track carrying the chickens. And once I am in position on the beam, from that view, we can see the chickens are initially stored in small cages on multiple tall shelving systems. And after rewinding and rewatching this video a bunch of times, it seems like the chickens are taken from these small cages, put upside down on the automated track, kind of like the chicken we saw and caught the other night, and eventually after going down the track far enough, the chickens' heads are cut off by machinery, and they continue to be carried by the automated system for food processing. And while we cannot see it from this angle, there is even a pile of chicken heads on the ground level. Whenever I continue to the next warehouse building, we can see tons of fluffy yellow chicks in a pen in the back of the building. They are taken from there and put on a conveyor belt. It is a little hard to see, but it looks like they are carried into a grinder, where a red mush of food comes out the other side. Just overall, a really nightmarish place to be if you are a chicken. There is nothing we can do about all of this though. The foxes just have to focus on surviving themselves. And also focus on getting back the stolen cub. After witnessing all of that, I grab an egg from a nearby bird nest, and I return to the cubs. Also, after exploring a little bit more, I think I know how to get to the event, and also how to get to the cub skill. And even though I really wanted to cover both of those on this night, I'm actually going to save that for the very next night. Plus, I would like to leave and check out the other events while we make it back to the den. But then suddenly, like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, just some sort of a slasher villain, the Furrier appears out of nowhere and tries to kill us with his hatchet. He cuts me off at the exact same spot for a third night in a row. At this point, it just feels like I am going out of my way to bite this man, but it is completely unintentional. It's fine though, this guy is basically the only antagonistic character we never see any kind of redeeming qualities in, so I am fine with biting this guy on a nightly basis. Seriously though, it is easy to feel sympathy for other people or other predatory animals in this game. This is one of the only people that we only ever see in a negative way, and it only gets worse. There's just nothing redeeming about this guy. Of the 2 remaining events, I think one of them is actually a marker that we can use to mislead the Furrier. I do not need that right now, and I am not going towards it. The other one is an actual event, and it happens to feature somebody that we saw earlier in the game. You may recall us seeing somebody referred to as the Roamer. That is the wandering musician who is playing a guitar by a stream of water in the river area. Well, the roamer has wandered here, and he is playing music again amongst the deforestation. Aside from Molly, this is one of the few people that is actually kind to the foxes. Now, if you walk up to the musician and you bark while he is performing, you will get a trophy or an achievement, but the musician will also give you food. So that is pretty nice, but even though he is friendly, unfortunately for me, there is somebody else nearby who is not. And that guy ends up running us off before I can pick up the food that the roamer gave us. I run away for a moment, and I sit and I watch, and whenever he walks away, I try going back to the food so I could feed the cubs. But then the hostile human comes after them again. As a result, instead of trying to do this dance back and forth just to get that food, I reluctantly return to the den. So we are going to bed hungry. That is not a great way to start the very next night, but we will address that early on night number 20. For now, let's just rest up and prepare to return to the Chirping Chicken Company. Also, with this about to be night number 20, we are roughly 2/3 of the way done with Endling Extinctionisforever. If everything goes alright and I remember everything correctly, this should be the very last night that I return and visit the Chirping Chicken Company. I know I kind of said that before, but this time I really mean it. And along the way, we are going to see the two hazmat suit guys again, and it has been a little while. Although we can only see them briefly, they seem to be inspecting the orange and black striped cables that are slightly buried underground, and also appear to be extending from the Corp factory. Now, since the hazmat suit duo is back at it again, there may be reason to believe there is another contamination concern, but I'm kind of just guessing because I'm not going to be sticking around them long enough to find out. After all, they are not going to be my focus tonight. After leaving the hazmat suit duo, I also pass by the roamer, who is still singing and playing the guitar. Now, I am not sure if he will give you food again if you were to bark at him, but that may be something to try out. For me, it's really not going to matter, because once the foxes pass by some rubbish, I have one of the cubs use the squeeze through skill, and that cub is able to collect some canned food from the other side. I mentioned earlier I thought this was some canned dog food, but really it could be pretty much any kind of canned food. There's really not much of an indication on what it is. But regardless, whatever this canned food is, it restores a very large amount of my health. So even though I started off the night on very low health, that food recovered nearly all of it. After that really useful snack, I had the foxes continue down the path to the Chirping Chicken Company, and the path I chose to go down is going to lead right back to the Scavenger, so I have to slow down for a moment and try to sneak by him, having the foxes carefully navigate around him. Or at least that's really what I should have been doing, because I nearly screw up whenever I try sneaking around him. I had a complete lapse in judgment, and I tried running between the bushes. But the Scavenger can hear and quickly react to you whenever you run. And I realized that just in time, because I had to quickly turn back around and run back to the very first bush I was at. Fortunately, I was able to duck back behind cover before the Scavenger had time to see me and shoot at me. Having avoided being shot at, I wait a moment, remember to myself, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be walking around here. And after I take a moment to sneak around him, that eventually gets me on the path to a drainage ditch where we can break back into the Chirping Chicken property. And after wandering around here the previous night, I remember how to get to the event, and I also remember how to get to the neighboring house. Fortunately, making things easier for me, it is going to be the exact same trail leading to both locations. So tonight should be a very productive night, where we get to see the event, and we also get to learn a new cub skill. The foxes are going to be taking a path that circles around most of the property. As I make my way along the path, I also collect all the food I can, since I have no intention of returning to the Chirping Chicken Company. So there is no reason to let the food go to waste while I am passing by. Eventually, our trail leads us back to the ground floor of the warehouse. That is going to be the same exact spot where we caught a chicken that was trying to escape on one of the very first nights we visited this property. This time around, we need to walk by the production line and get by the chicken conveyor belt. Once we get away from all the chicken processing taking place inside the warehouse, we eventually enter a yard on the opposite side of the building. That is where the event is going to happen. So somebody desperately broke in to try stealing a chicken for food. The result is that person being taken to the ground by a guard dog, and a human guard is overseeing the situation. Once they had control over the thief, he lost the chicken he was stealing, and it just so happened to land right in front of us. It is a really rough night for that guy, but we definitely could use the food. So we are just going to take that, and we just happen to continue being the recipient of chicken-related luck. Beyond the yard, we are able to climb the hill and reach the neighboring house. But this is not just any house. This happens to be the house belonging to the Furrier. So this can be a pretty dangerous place to be if you're here at the wrong time. Surrounding the house are a large number of cages. Some of those contain animals. A good number of them actually have dogs belonging to the Furrier. But we can make use of those cages and have the foxes climb up inside scroll on top of them. If you do that, you will eventually walk on one that has a rat inside of it. Doing so triggers a scene where one of the cubs falls into the cage and is stuck inside of there with the rat. Cornered with that rat, you can bark at the cub, and then it gets the confidence it needs to attack the rat. That altercation counts as food, and that is also how we learn the very next cub skill, because that cub has now learned how to hunt small animals. Whenever we are in proximity of select animals like rats, you can command the cub to hunt them and get the food for you. Early on, I really don't use that skill a ton, usually just opting to have the animal be hunted down by the mother fox. But it is a really good option to have whenever I just don't want to deal with trying to sneak up on an animal that is really annoying and does not want to comply with me. After learning the new cub skill, I grab an egg from a nearby bird's nest, and then I start returning to the den. We leave that neighboring house and we pass through the chicken carnage in the warehouse for a final time. And after 3 nights of being ambushed by the Furrier, I was ready to see the hatchet man again this time. He shows up on the Chirping Chicken Company property exactly as expected, and the mother fox gets to bite the crap out of him again. So yeah, this is almost tradition at this point. We just leave him hurt and we limp our way to the exit. Which I guess now that we know that he lives right next to the Chirping Chicken Company, us running into him feels a lot less random or coincidental at this point. I mean, he could basically just see us from his front porch. And as I begin to exit the property and get away from the hatchet man, I happen to run into a rabbit that I was not expecting to see, and for a moment I really wanted to hunt that rabbit and take it back with us to the den for food. But the rabbit does exactly what I was describing earlier, and decides it is going to be really annoying and not cooperate, and I just do not want to waste that much time on trying to get it, so I just go ahead and leave it behind. I don't think the cub can hunt rabbits, but if it could, I really should have done it right there. But yeah, I'm not really willing to waste too much time trying to get the rabbit because I am still unable to defend myself for a little while, and the Furrier could catch up to me. And between here and the den, he is really the only threat I have. So I really want to keep him behind us, and keep the path back to the den clear. As long as I do not get too sidetracked and go directly back to the den, everything should be fine. And after all the food I collected on or around the Chirping Chicken Factory, we are going to be ending tonight much more nourished than the night before. And yeah, the Furrier never really catches up to us, there are no other threats around, so when we get to the den, we are able to end night number 20 just fine. This also happens to be the very last night that we are going to be spending inside this den. On night 21, we are going to a new area, and we are going to have a new temporary home. And we get a quick reminder of the skills that we learned on this night. We now have the Hunt Cub skill, and that is actually going to be the very last skill that we have to go out of our way for that cub to learn. The only remaining skill it has to learn is one that we learn automatically. And with the Squeeze Through skill and the Hunt skill, that is probably going to be the most useful cub. But we are going to make sure that we go out of our way to get the 2 remaining skills that we have to be in the right place at the right time for. That way every cub learns all the skills they can possibly learn. Those remaining skills become available in our final days in this playthrough. Speaking of which, those final days are going to take place in a new location, so goodbye to this location and goodbye to the previous den. The very next den that we go to is going to be the very last one that we discover. And man, as I am running through here, this place has changed a lot since we arrived. Like, it used to be a very big and flourishing forest, and now it's just kind of barren. The deforestation has just kind of ripped everything out. Even if we were not just following the scent of our missing cub to a new area, I believe the foxes and the other animals probably would have needed to relocate anyway because of all of this. But yeah, now we are on the trail of more scents. The first one is going to come from what appears to be an oil canister. The scene it reveals shows that the Scavenger is pushing Molly and the stolen cub down the path in a wagon that seems to be made of scrap material like a bathtub. He is holding the oil canister to presumably lubricate the makeshift wagon, but must have left it behind. Within that wagon though, Molly is without her gas mask and is coughing into a handkerchief. We then find that the next scent is coming from the handkerchief that Molly was coughing into. It was dropped at some point and it is now stained red. So Molly must have been coughing up blood. The scene shows them continuing their journey in the wagon. The coughing has stopped for a moment, but Molly, she is looking particularly weak and is looking very down. Continuing to follow the last scent, we find that the lumber that was blocking our path before is now gone. We can enter a new area, and we find that the last scent is coming from a medication bottle. The scene shows the Scavenger shaking out the bottle, and that is the same bottle he stole from the Fisherman at the very beginning of the game. But even though he is shaking it, he finds that there is no more medicine left. He's stuck with only an empty bottle, so he decides to leave it behind. So it seems he has been giving the medicine he stole to Molly throughout the game. Without it, she is becoming very noticeably unwell. Making the matter of Molly's declining health even worse, they no longer have a home to go back to, no real shelter. Because their home was slated for demolition, they were forced to flee and they're heading in the direction of the refugee camp. Basically the only place they have left to go. In this game, our very last den is going to be inside of a giant hollow statue head. It kinda reminds me of the cartoonish statue head that was above the toy store in Resident Evil 3. But instead of it being a gigantic hazard in a zombie apocalypse, here in Endling it is just tossed in a dumping ground. The badgers also join us in this new den. We will be sharing this space with them for the rest of the game. One of the benefits of that is the mother badger will give us food at least once a night. Although you have to be here at the right time. So we are now in the dumping grounds, a big landfill-like area that is also used as a refugee camp. We saw signs for the camp earlier in the game. We are finally starting to see the people with nowhere else to go, nowhere else to live, besides this area overrun with trash. We also have the Scavenger, posted in a location he is using for hunting. That seems to be a desperate and risky measure with other people so close by. But with Molly's condition declining and also their homelessness, I suppose he is willing to do almost anything, even if it is unsafe, to try making some money to help her. Basically, the only thing he will not do is resort to using the fox cub she has grown attached to. I avoid the Scavenger and find some of the refugees among the tents they are living in. Around them are signs with some noteworthy statements that give us some more hints about the world around us. I am going to pause for a moment and show a screenshot of this and read them off. One of the signs says, "Oxygen is a right." It is implying that the air is becoming too polluted to breathe, at least not without consequence. That is something that is backed up by having a ton of smog funneling out of the Corp factory in the background in the same scene. It is also backed up by the fact that we've been seeing people throughout the game wearing gas masks on a basically daily basis. Another one of these signs backs up a theory I had earlier. It says, "No water, no life." This one implies the water may not be drinkable anymore. Something that I was kind of theorizing when we were looking at the men in the hazmat suits, because they were seemingly investigating the waterways after they were contaminated by the Corp sewage. Another one of these signs says, "Silence failed," but I am not 100% sure what it is referring to. Like maybe the company was silent and did not disclose the contamination to the inhabitants of the local area? Maybe these people were silent too long and let the environmental damage happen for too long? I'm not really sure what it is referring to. But in any case, I will leave the refugees alone before one of them can cause the foxes trouble. Not all of the refugees ignore the foxes, so I don't want to be in this area too long. There are going to be a good amount of pigeons in this area. We can sneak up on them and use them for food, which I think this is the first night that we end up eating pigeons. So that is another type of food that we can add to the list that we have eaten. We can also get a cub skill while we are here. Actually, all of the remaining cub skills are available now. And this might possibly be the most missable skill in the entire game. And now one of our cubs has learned how to disarm traps. It did so while desperately trying to save its mother, and yeah, this cub skill is one that is very counterintuitive. You get conditioned the entire game to avoid traps, but to learn this skill, you have to walk into a trap with no hints that you are going to survive. Like, we have no way of knowing we're not about to get shot by the scavenger the moment we get stuck. The only reason that does not happen is because some random person goes after us in the trap, and in doing so gets in the way of the scavenger's shot. And after the scavenger loses his clear shot, that random guy is really lucky he is not shot instead. Like I said earlier, it is way riskier hunting around all these people. But yeah, you can easily miss this skill by avoiding the trap, which again is something the game teaches you to do early on, so you're going to have to go against your survival instinct and run headfirst into that trap. The other cub skill that we have to go out of our way to find, it is available right now, but I'm not going to get it tonight. From here, I instead try to check on two things. The first is a yellow question mark that I saw on the map. I was not sure if this one was an event or if it was something I could mark to distract the Furrier whenever the sun started to come up. And it turns out it was just something I could mark, so I got a little bit sidetracked for nothing. The other thing I wanted to look into was another type of food. Oh, also, checking the map, I saw Molly's icon. She is interactable on this night, but I end up seeing her on a different night. Even though she is with the wagon that the scavenger was pulling around, our cub is not there with her. Nearby Molly, though, I remember there is another type of food in that area, and I want the foxes to be able to eat that to add it to our list. It requires us to climb on top of the trailer, and then onto their table, which gives us access to a fast food style to-go bag. And now the foxes can enjoy a burger. I take the bag with us back to the den so we can eat that, but I end up screwing up. I drop the bag, and then I enter the den before the cubs can eat the food that I dropped. So it does not count for me in this playthrough. Still, that is where you can find the burger if you're trying to eat all the types of food. I wanted to eat everything in this playthrough, but well, I messed up, it did not count. We will be at least one food item short, which is really funny considering it was right there. I just walked into the den a little bit too quickly. On this night we have more scents to follow, keeping us on the trail of the stolen cub. There are not very many of these left. Soon we will get to see exactly how that quest unravels. I have not missed any scents in this playthrough, but technically you can. So do be careful not to miss those. It would really suck to miss one, especially this late in the game. I assume if you do miss them, it kind of screws up your ending. Which there are a few different things that will impact what exactly your ending is. One of them is going to be the badgers, whether or not you saved the mother badger or saved her cub. That influences the ending. Then you can also lose some of your own cubs throughout this playthrough. So naturally how many of them survives really depends on whether or not you keep them alive. Just little stuff like that. The very first scent on this night is coming from a tripped bear trap. Investigating it reveals a scene where the scavenger is setting up the trap, and the wagon is in the background. But we can also see the Furrier that we've had to fight off on a regular basis is trying to sneak up to the wagon. He is doing that while the scavenger's back is turned. On the ground nearby we can find a cage similar to the one the fox cub has been kept in. This cage is empty, but it is the source of the second scent. The scene reveals it is not the same cage, and the Furrier was stealing from the wagon while the scavenger was working and while Molly was sleeping. He took the cage containing the fox cub and he left this one behind. The last scent is coming from a nearby log. Turns out the scavenger caught the furrier and held him at gunpoint. The scavenger backed down, placing the caged cub on the log. So he was returning the animal in exchange for his life. Now that we have seen that event, it seems like a good time to check on Molly. She is still in the same spot as before, and after seeing the furrier get dangerously close to her to try stealing the cub, it seems understandable why the scavenger is not leaving the cub with Molly at the wagon anymore. It was definitely bringing a dangerous person towards his daughter. Now we never exactly see where the cub is during all of this, but I'm assuming the cub is with the scavenger at his hunting point. When we get to Molly, she is without her gas mask again and she is sitting on the ground. She seems to be really drained of energy compared to how she was when we first met her. Whenever she sees us, she is initially sad she has no more food to give the foxes. That's fine though, that really doesn't matter. She is going through a lot and the mother fox offers her a little bit of comfort and allows Molly to hug her. She then weakly stands up and leans against the wagon, and the foxes must continue on their own journey. Which is going to have us sneaking by the scavenger again, and I was also trying to decide what exactly I wanted to do with the remainder of this night, because I kind of knocked out everything I wanted to do. I found all of these scents, I got to say hello to Molly, and I don't really think there's anything else really interesting for us to see on this night. I suppose I could try going for the last cub skill because it is available right now, but it is pretty close to the sun starting to come up as well, and I don't know if I really have enough time to conveniently get that. At least not without introducing more dangers like the Furrier or other humans. So yeah, I was kind of stuck being a little bit indecisive and I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do for the remainder of this night. I even checked the map and see if there's anything that stands out, and there's really not. I look around the trash dumping area for a little bit longer, trying to find some more food and just seeing what else I could find around the area. The exploration gets cut a little bit short though. Fresh from his near-death experience, the Furrier finds us again, and the foxes are forced to retreat into the den. So, night number 23 comes to an abrupt end, and we are on to night number 24. So on night 24, there is an event that I kind of just forget to go to. Whenever the night starts and you check the map, you may immediately notice the scavenger is no longer in his hunting spot. That is because on this night and this night only, he and Molly have gone to hang out with the other refugees. They are all at a campfire and hanging out and listening to the roamer play music, and they're all just kind of singing along together. So it is nice to see that the scavenger and Molly still have a few nights where they get to enjoy themselves and have some fun like that. But we are not really going to be seeing that because I forgot. Instead, my focus is going to be getting the very last cub skill. After I get this one, I'm going to have all of them, and to reach it, I backtrack to where I was found by the Furrier just the night before, only this time around, he is not going to be there. That path is going to lead back to the entrance of the Corp factory. At the front gate, we see a handmade sign that says liars. That is going to keep in theme with the signs we saw earlier about water pollution, air pollution, and people being silent about the situation. Well, it seems like maybe Corp was lying about that pollution being their fault, or maybe lying about the extent of the contamination. Something along those lines. Further on the property, we see graffiti on the factory walls that says your grandson is already dead. I feel like this is implying they are passing the environmental damage on and damning future generations with it. So just some interesting dialogue being told by the environment around us. We venture further into the factory, and since the last time we were here, all of the cubs have learned how to jump onto high objects, and one of the cubs has learned how to climb up trees and pipes. So it can now climb higher into the factory with the mother fox. After the cub falls into a bird nest, the mother and the cub work together. She picks him up, And as he's being lifted out of the nest by the mother, he grabs onto an egg, and that's how he learns the dangle skill, which allows the mother fox to hold that cub over ledges so he can grab objects that were previously out of reach. In the previous case, it was the pigeon's egg, and it's mostly just going to be eggs, but there may be some other examples. But yeah, that is going to be the dangle cub skill. Now that I have that final cub skill, I have decided to go on a pretty big detour before this night is over. Now, there are multiple ways in order to get to the area that I want to be in, so really it's your preference in which route you take, although on this night, the route I wanted to take is one that I'm not going to be able to do. The path I wanted to take was through the Corp factory, and I thought that would be the fastest way to get to where I wanted to go, but there was a slight problem with that. It turns out the security guard is directly in my path, and he would inevitably see me if I continued down that path. So I need a different way to get where I want to go because I do not want to get attacked. I don't know if this is one of those cases, but I know sometimes the security guard has a dog with him, and I believe if you get seen by him when he has that dog, you're not going to get away. So I needed to come up with an alternative. I mentioned earlier that the badger dens allow us to quick travel across the map. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to make my way to one of those dens, and my intent is to use that badger den to visit an area that we have not been to in a very long time. In fact, we have not been there since the snow melted and the seasons changed. So yeah, I'm having the foxes go all the way back to the river area from the very beginning of the game. The reason for this big backtrack is to get something that's going to help us out in our food quest. Early on in this playthrough, I mentioned that there is an egg that is one of a kind. It is an Easter egg that can only be found at the game's very first location in the river area. But even though it's in the very first area, it requires a late game skill. Well, the dangle skill was exactly what we needed in order to get that egg. And now that we have that, we can get that very rare type of food. So the foxes return to their very first home area. We take a moment to sneak by and dodge an owl that is still prowling around there, which I think that owl is going to be really the only threat to us in this area. There's really not too much here that's concern worthy for us. It's definitely way less dangerous than the areas that we've been staying at more recently. So we can run through here pretty freely. And after that we follow the trails enough to get back to that watery area that we saw that was polluted before, and somehow it looks even more polluted now. There's just way more trash than I remember there being at the very beginning of the game. But we go through all of that in order to reach that yellow Easter egg, and now our cub is able to get that for us. And once that egg is acquired, that's actually an achievement in this game, and that is how you get it. But yeah, I just want to make sure that I showed that because it's a pretty easy thing to miss. Now the sun is starting to come up, so I'm going to make the decision to forego the long trip back to the den that we've been staying at, and instead I decided to have the foxes stay in their original den one last time before returning. But yeah, after night 24, I now have every single cub skill in the game. That's how you get the For a Better Tomorrow trophy, which is pretty well named considering that we just gave the cubs all the tools we possibly could to give them their very best chance at survival as they enter adulthood. So yeah, their odds of avoiding extinction is suddenly looking even better. But for now, we're still just taking it one night at a time, and I am nearly back to that old radio tower that we were staying underneath for a pretty long time. So it is time for a very nostalgic day of sleep for the foxes. And now since we have unlocked everything, once we get inside that den, every single skill in the game pops up for us to see. A beautiful sight after all that work. On night number 25, I take a look at the map like I normally do, but I have to stop and appreciate it for just a moment, because at this point in the game we basically have filled the entire map. Now granted, there are a couple of spots that are still blacked out, but we mostly have everything filled in. We've just about seen everything there is to see in the game. You know, minus a couple of things I kind of forgot to do, like the campfire singing the night before, or the dumping of garbage into the river on one of the very first nights, but, you know, I've seen a lot. We've done pretty good. And on this night, we have 2 events showing on the map. While I make my way back to the dumping area, I will try checking out both of those. Although while I'm still in the river area and near the entry point to the Corp factory, I'm going to start by investigating the yellow question mark that we saw on the map that happens to be inside that property. I'm going to end up grabbing some pieces of food on the way to the Corp factory, but overall, I'm basically just going straight there. And like the previous night, there's really not too much around here that's going to get in our way. There are no major threats outside of that property, although that's going to change a little bit once we are on the Corp grounds. We have the foxes trek through the flooded basement and cross the bridge over the sewage draining pool. Once we get by all of that, we are pretty close to the yellow question mark that was on the map. We just have to be kind of careful and avoid the Corp security guards like the night before. They may not necessarily have the flashlight out standing in one position blocking one path for us, but they are still roaming around and doing their security checks. Besides that though, there is not too much around here to get in our way. Everyone else working in the Corp area is pretty much going to ignore us. Going to the yellow question mark reveals that there is a tipped over and broken vending machine. It kind of looks like people broke into it trying to steal the food that was inside, but there are a few items that seem to have dropped to the ground and got left behind. They happen to be canned meat and they provide plenty of health if you are in need. Now there are 3 of them on the ground and maybe you can save some of these for future nights, but I just go ahead and have the cubs eat all of them. I definitely did not need all of them. It's in excess of what I need for healing, but at least we found it and now we're at full health. And now you know about those for future playthroughs if you want to do this. Now it is time to check out the other event. We just need to find a path out of the Corp factory that allows us to enter near that spot. And on top of that, we have to find a route out of this factory that does not involve us running into a security guard. And you know, for there only being a few of these guys on such a big property, they do have a talent for putting themselves directly in the path I want to take. Which is a little bit annoying. I don't know how they always manage to do that, but they seem to always do. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, these are the same security guards that we saw back at the Chirping Chicken Company as well. Only back at that chicken processing plant, they really weren't as big of an issue for us there as they are here. Granted, they're not a huge issue for us here either, but it seems like they got in our way less there than they do here. And there is a red exclamation point which you do not see very often. Normally the yellow one is an indication that there's a human that will interact with you negatively and try to hurt you, but you're going to be able to fight your way out of it. That red exclamation point though, I think that means it's a guaranteed death, which means there's probably a dog over there. Regardless, I managed to weave my way around them and make it back to the security gate that leads out into the dumping area. And it turns out, because I didn't realize this initially, there are scents to be found on this night to help us find our missing cub. That was not immediately apparent because I started off in the river area, but now that I'm back, yeah, we have some things to do. So I need to start finding those before the night ends. The very first scent is going to come from some wooden debris. And the scene shows that it fell off the scavenger's wagon. It was kind of being used as shelter for Molly. That was pretty important because they were forced to vacate their home. It was really the only place that I'm aware of that Molly had to stay. And now even with this wagon, there is no longer a roof over her head. But even without a roof on the wagon, the scavenger continues to pull Molly and the cub around in that thing. The next scent looks like it's coming from more debris or maybe Molly's gas mask. It's a little bit hard to tell. The scene it reveals involves the wagon sustaining so much damage that it becomes unstable. It eventually falls apart, leading to Molly and the cub falling out of the wagon. And then the scavenger immediately goes back to help them. I go ahead and I grab a quick chicken dinner for the cubs before I start advancing to the very next scent, which is going to be the very last one for the night. And I really shouldn't need any more food before this night is over, so I can just focus on getting that very last scent. The final scent is coming from the makeshift wagon. It is fully broken down and abandoned. We smell it and we see the scavenger, Molly, and the stolen cub had to continue on foot. And after seeing Molly struggling to stand up on an earlier night, we know that's not going to be a very easy trip. Still, she carries the cub and the scavenger tries to comfort her and encourage her as they walk away. That is going to be where the trail ends for tonight. And after that, I considered going to check out the very last yellow question mark, but tracking down the scents took up a really good amount of the night. And with very little night left to conceal us, and after also just having gotten by the scavenger, I went ahead and I elected to just go ahead and end night number 25 here. Which, having wrapped up night number 25, means we're really only down to a few more nights remaining before this game is over. And on night number 26, at first it's not going to appear like there are too many events going on. Whenever we check the map, there really doesn't seem like anything is happening. Although we do see one new event taking place down at the refugee camp, so that's worth investigating. So I'm going to start my night off by getting some food over there. Then we can also check out the scene that's taken place. Along the way, I have one of the cubs dig for some food, and I also control the mother fox, so she is hunting a chicken. We're off to a great start already, so food really should not be an issue at all tonight. While I gather the food though, there is a scene taking place back inside the refugee camp. We even get an audible cue to go back there and take a look. And just like that, we hear a gunshot. And just like the last one that we heard from the Scavenger, we know to go investigate because normally there's something going on whenever we hear a gunshot like that. Only this time, it's not going to be the Scavenger that is the source. It's going to be something entirely different, and a whole scene is taking place for us to pick apart and try to figure out what exactly is going on. I will just get that chicken that I was talking about earlier, and then we will get a closer look. One of the tents is being investigated by a masked security guard and their dog. All of this is taking place after we just heard a gunshot, and that gunshot did not come from the Scavenger. In the hands of at least one person in the security group, we can see a gun. It is hard to tell what exactly happened at a distance, but we can go towards Molly and get a better look. And taking a moment to look everything over, I'm going to pause the game right here so we can kind of just take a moment to break down what exactly is going on. It seems like the security guard's search may have been met with some hostility. One of the occupants, who is now motionless on the ground, may have been shot because of it. Another person is motionless inside the tents, but I only heard one gunshot, so I'm not sure which of them got shot and what may have happened to the other person. And then on top of that, there is another person being apprehended on the ground. 4 more people are on their knees being watched by the dog. And just looking at this scene in progress, it's not exactly clear what may have led to this altercation, this situation, but we have seen this security in 2 other places before. We saw them most recently when navigating the Corp factory, but I also referenced that these were the same security guards from the Chirping Chicken Company. And in the scene where the refugees are being detained, we can see blankets from the Corp factory. The cubs find and eat some canned food on the ground while we're looking at this, and that's the same kind of canned meat that we found in the vending machine that was broken into on the Corp factory grounds. Also nearby, we got a chicken from a shopping cart. And we can recall a scene on the Chirping Chicken Company grounds where we saw somebody trying to steal a chicken from that location only to get caught by the dog and a security guard. So my theory here is that this group of refugees has been desperately and consistently stealing from the Chirping Chicken Company and Corp. And finally, the security group has started to come after them. After getting a good look at that scene, I tried rushing back to the den, that way we could call it an early night, but I forgot about the owl. Me running by woke up the owl, and then it started attacking one of the cubs. Fortunately, I was able to intervene and save the cub without there really being any issues. Although the cub is startled, I just go ahead and pick up the cub long enough to get away from the owl's area. And then I put it on the ground and comfort it, that way it's no longer nervous, and it will keep up with me at full speed instead of cowering behind. And after all of that excitement, I'm just going to go ahead and end this, and that's going to be all for night number 26. So yeah, that apprehension scene back at the refugee camp was really the highlight of this night, and it can pretty much be summarized by the refugees being incredibly desperate after losing livelihood, home, and really resources just to stay alive. All of which is probably to blame because of the companies around them like Corp and the Chirping Chicken Factory, and also those organizations are probably why their health overall is declining as well. Then after living in this state for a prolonged period of time, the refugees were desperate enough to start stealing from those companies, just trying to survive, taking whatever they could from the organizations that likely left them destitute, which is how we get to the situation here tonight where those companies end up retaliating against them for their theft. So it seems the refugees just keep on losing and everything is kind of at their expense in favor of those companies. But enough about night number 26, we are now on night number 27 following some more scents. We can see that the Scavenger and Molly are still in the dumping area by the refugee camp, but where have they been recently? Well, I grabbed some food and avoid an owl in order to go follow those scents and find out. The path leads us back to the Corp factory. Just outside the factory, near a large burning pile of garbage, we find the very first scent is coming from a canteen on the ground. The scene it reveals is the scavenger using the canteen to help Molly drink water. Molly is still carrying around the stolen cub with her, but she seems to be struggling. Following the second scent leads us further onto the factory grounds. We go to an underground area that has been partially flooded by the recent rain. This is the same area where we learned the dig cub skill. On that walkway, we can find the second scent is coming from an area on the ground where Molly had been sick. During that, she dropped the cage with the cub in it, and her father was rushing back towards her while she was on the ground. Continuing down that walkway, we try finding the very last scent. In the process, we find the underground area is mostly just a trash dumping area, and the trash bags are being tossed down here through a hole in the ceiling. Passing by all of that, at the end of the walkway, the scent is coming from a large pipe on the ground. In the scene it reveals, we see Molly is no longer able to stand up and is leaning against the pipe. Seemingly all she can do is hold on to the caged cub. And her father can do little other than just being there and trying to comfort his daughter. Now, I'm not exactly sure why they are at the Corp factory for this. They may have come here to steal more from the factory, or they may have just been seeking shelter after the wagon fell apart. But regardless, things are not going well. And with that, we have found all the scents available on this night. There is only one night remaining where we're going to be able to follow scents and try to get the cub back. So we are getting very close to this story's conclusion. For now though, we need to finish this night. In this flooded area beneath the Corp factory, we can find some drowned rats to eat. They are pretty easy food for us to pick up as we're exiting Corp. I do end up screwing up on the way back out to the den though, because this is going to make 2 nights in a row where I ended up aggravating an owl. Previously, I just completely ran by the owl forgetting it was there, which woke it up and then it attacked the cub. On this night, I don't just sprint by the owl. In fact, I thought I was going to be okay. I slowed down, I tried scoping out the owl, and whenever I had a good understanding of where it was, I just slowly walk by it. Although slowly walking by is not sneaking by. And because of that, the owl was still able to hear me, woke up, and well, yet again it attacked one of my cubs. But I am at least ready for that, and I am able to fight off that owl before it can hurt the cub. After getting attacked, similar to what we saw before, this cub is going to be scared, and then it's going to move around more slowly. In order to stop that, I take a moment to comfort the cub. That way it will keep up with us at full speed as we make it back to the den. Around this time, I start making use of the cub skills a little bit more. Like rather than having the mother fox hunt all the time, chasing down rats or whatever animal may be around, I start more regularly using the cub and having it run after them instead. And yeah, it's definitely a lot easier and way less annoying. And courtesy of that hunting effort, night 27 is going to end with the family at full health. Alright, only a couple of more nights to go, and the next one is going to be a very big one. Because on back-to-back nights, we have a trail of scents to follow. These are going to be the final 3. And even though we have been residing within the dumping area for quite some time now, the trail of scents is going to lead us away. Instead of sticking around here, we are going to be going back towards the recently deforested woods. This is all basically going to be leading us back in the direction of the scavenger's house, the one which they had to vacate due to a notice of demolition. Along the way, we are going to find the very first scent is coming from the scavenger's bag, the one he had a bunch of stolen and salvaged items inside of. It has been abandoned and no one else is around. The scene it reveals shows the scavenger tossing it aside, and he left it whenever he saw Molly drop the caged cub and collapse to the ground, and it was there she seemed to have stayed unconscious. He ran to her, leaving everything else behind. We follow the trail to the very next scent, which is through all the cut down trees. And we find the next object that the scent is coming from is going to be the scavenger's gas mask. In this scene, the scavenger removed his gas mask in order to call out clearly. He was holding the unconscious Molly as he begged out for help, but no one did. One person passed by and plainly saw them, but refused to help. The very last scent in this game returns us to an area we have not been to in a while. We return to the grave site of Molly's mother. There we can find the entire family and the caged cub. Only Molly is mostly covered up and not moving, and the scavenger is on his knees crying. Making it to the very last scent leads to us getting the one thing that we've been chasing after for nearly the entire game. We end up getting back our stolen cub. I wanted to let that entire scene run before I really tried to comment on it because it's a really good one. So initially when we found the scavenger and Molly, we move into the scene and he's able to see us. The scavenger initially moves to pull the caged cub away, but in doing so, he glances at his deceased daughter, and that makes him reconsider. This was the animal that she had bonded with, refused to let her father give up, and one of the only sources of happiness that she had in her final days. With that in mind, he does not hold the animal captive, and he frees the cub to return to its mother. Then we have a unique option to interact with the scavenger just like we had done with Molly multiple times before. Previously, that led to us comforting Molly in her hard times. Now we can do the same thing for the scavenger in his time of mourning. Despite being opposed to each other the whole game, the fox puts that aside to give a grieving man a moment of comfort in the harsh world they are both just trying to survive. With the family of foxes reunited, we return to managing our own survival, gathering food, and returning to shelter. At this point in the story, we are nearly done. There is not much need to conserve food anymore. There is only one night left where we actually need to be collecting food, so gather whatever you need, don't worry about conserving too much, and just go ahead and advance to night number 29. Before I call it a night myself, there's actually really only one more food item that I want to collect. I'm going to go down the path just by the den, and there's going to be some garbage, some rubbish, whatever, and there's going to be a small gap in the bottom of it. That is where we can use the squeeze through cub skill one more time, and the cub goes inside of there, grabs some more canned food, and brings it out for the rest of the family. After being contained for so long, I can only imagine how hungry that fourth cub is. So it is good to see him eating, and as a whole, the entire family is going to be returning to the den tonight with a full health bar. No one is going to bed hungry. And that's pretty much all I wanted to accomplish, and that is going to be it for night number 28. And for the first time in a very long time, we get a glimpse at the entire fox family together in the den, also accompanied by the badger family. Now it is time to advance to night number 29. So tonight is going to be really simple, because basically the only things that we have to do is ensure that our cubs are fed, and that they eventually return to the den safely. As long as we do that, there's pretty much nothing that can go wrong. There are no more scents to find, no more cub skills we could potentially miss, or just basically surviving. And making things even easier is that on this night, it does not matter how much health we have whenever we return to the den. We could go back with full health or barely any health at all. Regardless, as long as we make it back to the den safely, it's not going to matter and the result is going to be exactly the same. Starting off the night, I walk around the area and I have one of the cubs use their skill to disable the traps. That way we can walk around here without there really being any concern of getting stuck with somebody chasing us. I also make sure to avoid the owl for now. We will see if I end up screwing that up again later on like I had the previous nights, considering it's been kind of an ongoing thing that I forget about the owls and get attacked. But I'm confident we are not going to mess that up. Hopefully I'm right. And I also make sure to go after the cub skill related foods, like dangling for eggs and stuff like that, all of which restores our health a good amount, so there really shouldn't be much for me to worry about. But then again, like I was saying, there's really not much to worry about in general on this night. Considering where our health bar is currently at, I don't even think I could possibly go hungry in a single night as long as I actually return to the den. I suppose if I were to just stay outside and never return to the den, I could eventually run out of health, but even that sounds like it would take a considerable amount of time. So I basically just have to avoid dying from hostile humans or having any of the cubs die due to something else like the owl. Outside of those factors, this is basically a guaranteed night of success. With so little to worry about and being eager to conclude the game, I actually end up calling it a very early night to end night number 29. Or at least I would have, but I actually screwed up there. I forgot that on night number 29 there is still one very important thing that I need to see. There is an event that only takes place on that night. But after you return to the den and end a night, the game auto-saves. And I cannot skip or return to a specific night just to show that event. Instead, I had to play through the entire game again to reach this very same night, and then be able to show the scene I am talking about. Fortunately, you can beat this game in just a few hours, so doing all this again really was not too big of a deal. It's just kind of funny that I basically had to beat the game twice to record this one night properly. So yeah, rather than ending the night whenever we return to the den, I'm actually starting night number 29 over one more time. And alright, here we are back at the den, so let's go ahead and skip to night number 29 on playthrough number 2. The event that I want to see is back at the gravesite of Molly's mother, and now Molly herself. They may be gone, but the scavenger remained, and there is still a little bit more to his story, which his story contains a very important detail for how this game is going to end. So yeah, back again on night number 29, I return to the grave with all 4 cubs. We can see a shovel and one of Molly's teddy bears near where she is buried. But more unexpectedly, the scavenger now lies dead at the gravesite as well. The cause of death is made very clear. There is a hatchet that is embedded in the man's torso, and we have only known one person in the entire game to be wielding a hatchet. That is somebody that we have had to bite and fight off multiple times. Someone the scavenger previously held at gunpoint to prevent being robbed. The Furrier appears to have ambushed and killed the scavenger. This event is unavoidable regardless of what you do, and it is going to influence the end of the game. Since I have already shown the rest of how night number 29 goes, I am just going to fade to black here and begin the end of the game. After raining non-stop for many days, the area flooded. We saw the badger mother and cub floating aboard some debris, being carried away by the current. The fox cubs ran to the broken makeshift wagon the Scavenger abandoned, and they were able to float away safely. The mother fox became submerged in the water and the screen went black, with the title card appearing. This, however, is not the end. We just got done playing the very last night of the game. We still need to play the very last day. The mother fox wakes after being swept away to a barren, desert-like area. In the background, we see a long line of people walking through the hot and harsh terrain. They are fleeing the aftermath of the natural disaster, and we need to do the same. But first, we must find the cubs. They can be found in one of the muddied areas nearby, which is still wet from the current that swept us away. The cubs are stuck in the mud not far away from where the makeshift wagon also washed up. One by one, we carry them out of the mud. Eventually we find all of them and pull each of them away to the safety of dry land. Although safety is kind of a strong word right now. They have the freedom to walk around again, and the family must do like everyone else, seeking out somewhere safe. We journey forward, but things start grimly. We find the owl that we've encountered throughout the game did not survive the flood. Eventually, we hear the cries of another animal. Once we cross to the other side of a fallen wind turbine, we find a tragic scene. We last saw the badgers together, using debris as a raft as they got carried away by the flood. In the end, we find that the badger cub did not survive. The mother tries desperately to wake her child, but it can't be done. Although we have bonded over the course of this story, there is nothing we can do for the badgers now, and we must keep moving. Fortunately, the 4 cubs are unharmed. At worst, the mother fox is hurt, but she is still able to keep limping forward. It seems this flood also managed to sweep offshore boats onto the land. We can see those in the background. Aboard one of them is the Furrier, who is searching for valuables to steal. He spots us, and shortly after, he retrieves the rifle of the Scavenger. Presumably the Furrier stole the weapon after killing the Scavenger, and now for the first time he has a long-range option to use against us. Not that distance is going to matter much here. While hurt and limping, the mother fox could not fight him off up close either. Fortunately, he did not seem to be able to line up his shot, and we are able to separate from him once more. As the foxes near a row of damaged solar panels, fatigue begins to settle in. One of the cubs is unable to keep running. Seeing the cub falling behind, I have the mother fox pick it up and carry it along. We have done everything we possibly can to ensure that these cubs are going to survive and that they would have a good shot at a real future. We're not going to leave them behind now. So anytime they fall behind, the mother fox is going to go back for them. We continue to do so after crossing to the other side of the solar panels. And once on the other side of those, we find even more solar panels have been seriously damaged by the recent disaster. Concerningly, we also see the mother badger sprinting ahead of us. It is unlikely she would be willing to quickly separate from her deceased cub, especially after the way we last saw her. Considering that and the speed at which she was running, there has to be danger nearby. We are just unable to see what prompted the badger to flee. Not yet, anyway. Fatigue begins to kick in for another one of our cubs as well. We place down the first cub who is rested and able to run again, and then we pick up the next one that is starting to fall behind. Upon reaching a gorge, we find another cub is unable to jump over on their own. So we must help another and carry it across that chasm. The mother fox collects her cub and carries it safely across the gap. All together again, they continue forward. And there is nothing but uncertainty about where exactly they are going to turn up. In fact, that uncertainty is even shown on screen with the camera panning out, giving you a larger view of the surrounding area, all of which seems to remain desolate and without much life. So there's plenty to be concerned about with the uncertainty of where we are going and what options we have ahead, but everything is not without hope. After a very long walk, the sun begins to set on this day. We also begin to see signs of flourishing nature again. Grass, bushes, and trees all appear in the distance. The foxes are nearing somewhere new where they can settle down. But the threat that the badger was running away from, it soon emerges. The Furrier returns and quickly shoots in our direction. Fortunately, his shots miss, but the foxes must hurry to safety before he can try again. This is where the game comes to an end. No matter what you do, the mother fox will be shot by the Furrier. She always gets away just long enough to pass away with her cubs nearby. How you play the game can change some details about this though. In this playthrough, all 4 of my cubs survived, and they made it all the way here to this protected woodland. They will have the chance to use all the skills that they have learned in this game to survive without their mother. Something else we did in this playthrough was save and help the badger every chance we could. While the badger cub will not survive regardless of what you do, its mother can, and she can make it all the way to this protected woodland area with your cubs. When the credits come to an end, they will follow the badger deeper into the woods. Given that on multiple occasions in this playthrough the badger has fed your cubs, she may continue to care for them after the mother fox is gone. You as the player is just left hoping that you have done enough for the cubs to live on. Consider for a moment that foxes were already thought to be extinct in this world, and people were wrong about that. After all, we got to play this entire game as the family of foxes. So maybe people could be more wrong than we even realized, and maybe other foxes even exist in these woods. Maybe extinction can be avoided. And while I am being optimistic about the chances of survival for the cubs, I did begin to wonder, is survival even possible for the cubs at their current age? And after researching it a little, the answer is yeah, they actually could survive at this point in their lives. The first thing I questioned was, when are fox cubs considered mature and able to live on their own? And the number I was seeing when looking that up was 10 months old. And despite the game ending on what would be day 30, I am convinced they were not 30 consecutive days. The mother fox gave birth on night 0, immediately after the forest fire. Then the next night that we play as the fox, there is snow everywhere and nothing is smoking or charred anymore. That definitely did not happen over just 24 hours. I'm not sure exactly how much time passed, but it seems like the game transitioned from fall to winter. Then on night number 4, The fox cubs are weaned off of their mother entirely and eating solid foods, something that normally takes 6 to 8 weeks. By night number 13, the winter has ended, the snow melts, and spring begins. By day 30, we saw what I believe was the scorching heat of summer. From start to finish, I think the game ends after about 7 or 8 months. So considering everything they have learned and how they can get food for themselves, maybe the stolen cub could learn from its siblings, and maybe the badger could even help the cubs for the remaining 2 months. I mean, she has been helping them throughout almost the entire game. So since they are close to being mature already, they have an adult badger helping them out. Maybe survival is possible. As the young foxes follow the badger deeper into the woods, the game fades to black, and we get a message from the creators of the game. That message says, "Thank you for playing. Endling Extinctionisforever is a game that is very close to our hearts, and touches on topics that are very important to us. We appreciate the great feedback and positive reviews we got so far. Now is your chance to review and give feedback. Spread the word and make the world a better place." So yeah, the creators definitely used the story of Endling in order to give a very environmental message, but what exactly is the story of Endling? Like, of course the main story covers the survival of the mother fox trying to raise her cubs and then just trying to get the stolen cub back. That main story is very clear from start to finish, and we're focused on it throughout the entire game. But what else is there? Because there is a lot going on in the background of this game. I was taking notes on this game, and I want to take a shot at piecing everything together. So the game starts with us in the middle of a forest fire in a natural park. No cause is immediately clear, and that never really changes, which kind of surprised me. I figured there would be a hint about what exactly caused the fire at some points, but I never really saw anything. Which maybe there was a hint and I just missed it? Regardless, given all that we see later on, I think it's safe to assume that some kind of human negligence is to blame. That is a pretty big theme in this game. On the Natural Park Preserve Species chart, we saw wolves, bears, squirrels, and foxes were considered extinct, letting us know that nature is not doing well in this world, which people aren't exactly doing well in this world either. We see many people like the refugees and the scavenger who are just left destitute. Some of them I assume are from the forest fire. And then in the case of people like the scavenger, the deforestation efforts seem to take away their homes. Even worse, they can't even really rely on basic amenities like clean air or clean drinking water. Almost everyone in this game is wearing gas masks due to the poor air quality. And drinking water around here seems to lead to illness because of the heavy contamination and pollution. The scavenger's daughter Molly seems to be a victim of this contaminated environment. And so too was probably her mother. Left without homes or the money necessary for medical care, dying from exposure is incredibly likely. To try avoiding this, the scavenger resorted to stealing medication and anything else he could, just anything that may help the chances of his family surviving. He is not the only one though. Many people resorted to stealing food and supplies to try getting by. This would lead to retaliation from the companies they stole from. Those companies are probably the closest things we have to villains in this game. I mean, you have more obvious antagonists like the Furrier or the Scavenger, but these are still people just trying to survive in a really harsh world. It is widely implied that the Corp company is one of the biggest reasons why this world is so hard to live in. We ended up witnessing scenes and finding other hints that the Corp company is behind the contamination that led to the inhospitable conditions. Their negligence and lies seem to have led to the mass sickness and homelessness we witness. Their pollution may also be the main reason why so many other animals have gone extinct. The deforestation we witness definitely does not help that either. So yeah, the game has a very big nature conservation theme. The game implies at every turn that the damage being done to the environment is increasingly irreversible. People and animals alike will suffer from it, and only so many more instances of this can happen before we can't correct it anymore. The end of the game is bleak, but there is reason for cautious optimism. We found an area flourishing with plant life, and it seems to be a paradise for the animals. The badger and the cubs, they have a real chance of starting over and surviving here. But there is a foreboding sight in the distance. It is a nuclear power plant in the background, which is not a bad thing by itself, but one of the cooling towers is damaged, a possible sign the plant may be falling apart. And similar contamination and disasters could be right around the corner if people don't learn from the recent mistakes. The plant could be repaired and handled properly, and then maybe nothing wrong would ever happen. Or it could continue to crumble and another beautiful place of nature may become unlivable. And I think overall that was the message the creators wanted to send to the real world. That there has been damage done to the world around us, but it is not irreversible yet. So I will end my impression of the story here, and we are just left hoping that the people of this video game's world, they learn from Corp's mistakes, and they do right by the environment and people around them. That is pretty much going to do it for the game Endling Extinction is Forever. I enjoyed this game a lot. I liked the art style, I appreciate the message, and I was definitely moved by the events that take place, adding it to a short list of games that actually made me feel something from the story being told. This game gets that distinction alongside others like Silent Hill 2 and Final Fantasy VII. This game has a lot to say, which is really saying something for a game that has no spoken words. It is always impressive when some form of media commits to that and pulls it off. I have a few other examples that come to mind, like there was this anime movie called Angel Egg, and it has a similar approach with very little talking whatsoever, but the visuals were so strong it really did not matter. Comics have pulled this off as well, like one that comes to mind is Godzilla in Hell. There is also a TV show called Primal that does this, where there is very little speaking with the exception of like one episode, but the visual experience is so good no words are really needed. It seems like a really hard thing to pull off, but like I said, it's really impressive when it's done well. I think Endling does a great job with this choice. There are plenty more good things I could say about this game, but the playthrough is done and I need to wrap this up. I'll be working on my next playthrough video soon. I think the next game I am going to be doing is a sequel to one I have already covered previously on this channel. Soon I will be returning to Nosgoth, and we will be getting an update on Raziel and a playthrough of Soul Reaver 2. For now, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this playthrough. Take care, and hopefully I will see you next time.